I would like to call to order the Select Board meeting for December 13th, 2022. Tonight we're being recorded live on RCTV, Comcast Channel 22, Verizon Channel 33. And Rob is our videographer this evening. Thank you, Rob. Tonight's agenda, we will be finishing the town department budgets for fiscal 24, library, facilities, finance, shared costs, budget summary. We have a couple of meeting minutes to approve. And then we have two other items tonight. One is to have a discussion on ideas about and potential sites for a new senior/community center/municipal building, including any possible new alternatives and potential vote to authorize town manager to expend funds to explore any such sites. After that, we are going to have another discussion in terms of 17 Harnden Street, which will include an executive session under Purpose 6. And as of right now, our intention is, I think, not to return after that session into open session. So that's kind of where we are. So let's go public library. Amy, please take it away.
Thank you very much. My name, for anyone who may not know, is Amy Lannon. I'm the director of the Reading Public Library, and Caitlin is all over this. Thank you.
Yay,
Caitlin. Thank you for having me tonight, and I get to follow some really great presentations from last week. Next slide, please, Caitlin. Just to give you a little context before we get into the actual FY24 budget. FY24 will be the fourth of a 5-year strategic plan. You can view that strategic plan on our website, readingpl.org. The strategic plan is designed around our vision and core values that are the foundation to create 3 strategies. The 3 strategies that we're working with right now is customer convenience or access, community learning and engagement, and the library is space and place. These might seem a little kind of just sort of random, but if you read the whole strategic plan, it makes sense. Just one of the things, it's one of the things that guides us when we're building our budget, our annual budget. And these strategies really emphasize a shift in libraries from being a sort of gatekeepers and information holders, a container, to really spaces of transformative learning. And what I mean by that is we are surrounded by information. Information is everywhere. How do we get that information to transform into knowledge, and how do we then transform our knowledge into wisdoms, right? So we have to work on spaces and opportunities and methods and tools where we can create and encourage growth mindsets that can adapt and flex in a changing world. And you see here listed our vision and core values. Next slide, please. Also, before I get into the FY24 budget, just a little more context for you. I've used this similar slide before. I update it each year, but it gives you the value of the Reading Public Library within our own community. In fiscal year 22, residents saved $2.8 million by borrowing books instead of buying them. The average value estimates that you see in the far right corner, particularly for the books, specifically for the books, are taken from an FY20, I'm just going to note that's pre-inflation, an FY20 retail pricing surveys from the Library Journal, Follett, and Baker & Taylor distributors. There are 3 industry standards that we use. So if you take just those books and then you add in the value of the other things that we've borrowed, your digital resources, museum passes, attendance to programs, the community received in FY22, the community received a 4-fold return on their investment in the library. So it's a really solid investment. Other things to note is that over half of Reading residents have a library card. We offer free fax and scan services, free Wi-Fi, free public computer use, and in FY22 we had over 5,500 attendees at about 500 programs. So this is great. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing the numbers and the statistics, and I think it is important as we work on planning and implementation of library services But I'd also like to just kind of call out and recognize the qualitative value of having a library in our community. And something that's not reflected here in these numbers are the human connections and experiences that we see. And that, just to name a few, might be the homebound patron that can't get to the library and gets books and DVDs and things delivered to their door. Program specifically for adults with developmental disabilities. There's something in the special needs. There's something called a cliff at 22. Pretty much all your services just go away. You gotta learn to be an adult. So we've been having therapeutic programs for adults with developmental disabilities and on the spectrum. Free access to learning to code for a child who can't pay to have a coding class. And easy access to other town services. So we have Tanya, our public safety clinician, comes in and for weekly appointments. Aday and his crew have been in the library with flu clinics, COVID clinics, blood pressure screening, hearing screening, vision screening. So we're just a good central location for that as well. Next slide, please. So, like I said, all that is to say it's a good investment. At last night's Board of Library Trustee meetings, just got it under the line. The board approved an FY24 recommended budget of $2,095,025, which is exactly 3.75% increase over FY23. Salaries account for 81% of this budget. That's very typical. And our employees are truly our greatest asset. They will last. What they do is far more important than the book that we buy. So salaries for this particular budget are increased by 4.8%. And that is because this is the adjustment, and we heard it last week, and you'll hear it again tonight. The pay and class study that was performed by GovHR with the town of Reading, it kind of shifts the whole compensation structure and moves Reading into the 75th percentile, which is really wonderful. So that study, combined with the 1.25% COLA set by the town manager, gives us that 4.8% overall increase in salaries, which, like I said, salaries are one of our biggest drivers. Next slide, please. So that's the salaries. The expenses, we talked a lot about this last night at the trustee meeting. Not a lot, but we spent some time on it. Group together, all of you, when you look at your town warrant and we go to FinCom, or when we put it in the warrant, our library expenses are L92, and you'll see one number, and that number is that minus 0.6%. So that's what I call a combined number. For planning and state reporting purposes, so what I give to the trustees, so I just want to share with you what I sent to them. We separate our general expenses from materials because the materials are a benchmark for the state aid eligibility. So you can see how that's broken out. In FY23, our general expenses were increased by 10%, and we were so excited because we'd had some level funding and drop funding, COVID, and even before that. So the FY24 budget is actually reducing that same number now by 10.8%. So we're sort of at a net loss back to kind of, a few years ago where we were on expenses. And that's difficult, but that does help us offset our salary increase so that we can maintain the 3.75% budget. Like everyone else, though, we are really concerned about inflation. Can we continue to do our daily operations with a 10.8% reduction in our expense lines? Rather than cut across the board, we decided to cut our professional development costs and our library technology equipment costs. There's two reasons for that, or there's reasons for each of that. Professional development, we do have some more options for online training that instead of going to conferences, there's some programs out there for Train the Trainer. It would still be a hit for FY24. It would restrict some of, as a learning organization, professional development is something like teachers. It's really important for our staff to continue to do that. So I think we're creative. I think we can make that work. For technology, it's definitely another area where I would normally hesitate to cut back by 33%. But the increase that we had to get it up to $12,000 last year, we're busily spending that and we're trying to get ahead. Technology expenses are things like replacing the public computers. They have a lifespan, so we're on a 5-year cycle. We replace so many computers every year. And we work very closely with IT on that. So the net result is that we think the FY24 budget can accommodate the decreases for 1 year. And trust me, I'll be back here next year asking to increase those expense lines to get it back up there. And then you can see separately the materials budget that is set out at, it's 272,375. That is exactly 13% of the overall budget recommendation, and that's what we are required to have for certification and for state aid eligibility. So just one last little note, just to give you a little perspective. All things being equal, when I had created this budget, I would have recommended a budget that had a +2 combined expenses. So you would see +2 at the top instead of -0.6. I just want to give you a context for that. It is $10,000. We're not talking about millions of dollars or huge amounts of dollars. If there's any way between now and FinCom or now and town meeting, we can figure out how to keep that $2,095,025 and somehow move $10,000 from salaries to expenses. I might try. I'm working with Sean and Sharon. They're so great about helping to work the numbers. But the trustees were very clear last night. Employees are first. It's really important that we get those salaries where they need to be and set so that we can retain our workforce and we can attract good employees in the future. So that's the basics of the budget. So before I go on to an overview of services, do you have any questions?
So question, can you talk a little bit about how the usage of the library has been changing? The materials, the number of transactions, up, down, sideways? I know categories are definitely shifting.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit more information on that? One for kind of the borrowing side.
Yeah.
The other side I'm interested in is the kind of space utilization.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about how to maximize
Yeah.
space resources. How to do that.
I'll get back to your other question about circulation and everything, because I have some service overview that will, I think, touch on that. But if you want to talk a little bit about the space, space utilization for the library, and I'm assuming you mean public meeting rooms, because you can come in and just sit there. That's not a problem. That we do have a meeting room policy, and that meeting room policy is reviewed pretty much every single year. And I would say, so I've been director for 6 years. I've worked here in the library for a lot longer, 20 years. It regularly goes through changes. We look at the schools policy, we look at the buildings policy, we look at other library policies. And it's changed. First it was like you could have up to 6 times per year, then 12 times per year, 12 times once a month, but now you can do 12, but you can do them all at once. So we try to be as accommodating as possible. There are some restrictions for meeting rooms in the public library. We can set a fee, though we do set a fee. It's $10 for the like a half of the community room, $20 for all of it, which is a very minimal fee. And there's additional things if you want chairs and technical help and all of that other stuff. The priority, though, is for the library usage. So how we structure that is that you can't, like, if you wanted to book out a meeting a year from now, you can't do that. You have to wait until about 3 months ahead. So there's all these guidelines. Like I said, some of those things change because we've tried to adapt to what people want. I will be honest that we have users that would like to come in every single week and they would like to use it for their clubhouse or their meeting space. And then people who would just really like to use it once a year. We try to balance those things out. We can't guarantee that someone could use it every Monday for the whatever, because what if the library wants to do a program on a Monday? So sort of we have first dibs. I guess we're always taking suggestions. So if we have comments, the money that we receive is very small. It's like over a year. It's very minimal. It goes into it goes in the general fund. We don't even get the money back on it. It goes into another fund, and it's not in our revolving fund, but the purpose of those fees, and this is the case I believe with any, Sharon can correct me if I'm wrong, whenever we collect a fee for anything, it has to go back to the use for what it is. So we can't just collect those fees and then buy books with them. We can't do that. We can't pay salaries on them. So that's partly why it's such a minimal fee, because it's not gonna really, we can't generate revenue that way. And related to that, it's one of the few things that we do charge fees for, and it is supposed to go to help maintain the space. By definition, by law, what we do has to be free. So we can't charge you to borrow a book. Most libraries are now going fine-free. It's a barrier to service and things like that. But that was a little bit of a rambling answer to your question about space, but I'm not sure, I probably should have asked what exactly do you have for a question about
So
space?
that covered some of it. I think one of the questions is thinking about if there are community service activities of the town, how those are treated now, if there may be opportunities to maybe try certain things.
Yeah, so as Jean mentioned, I mentioned Tanya coming over, working with the day, so we definitely do those. As Jean mentioned, we're working with the PCS to have Wellness Wednesdays as well, so hosting a series of programs. It's just, I would say that for town services, I feel like the town department heads, all of us work really well together. And I can't say that enough, but the idea that, someone can just call and say, hey, I gotta figure out what to do. We just hosted the Middlesex Town Clerks Association. Laura Gem had, needed a space for that, and it's, so we do what we can to provide service. Jane has a lot of DPW training. We've done a lot of DPW training there because there's a lot of required training that they have to do. They need a space. And those types of things, especially the DPW training, happens outside our regular hours. It could be on a Thursday morning when we're not even open. But the crew gets there at, I think the training starts at 7:30, so we've got John Davis there opening up the building. So and we don't obviously charge for that. I mean, that's just a service. So it is we do use it for a lot of town services. And the best way to do that is to call me or Michelle or send in the thing, and that's what we do. So it is a community center. It's not a community center like, can I have a birthday party there, and things like that. So and everything that's there in general is supposed to be open to the public, with the exception obviously of some town things that we can do at the library. We can have staff meetings there, that's not open to the public.
Thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please. Thanks, Caitlin. So what does $2,095,025 get you? So I'm just gonna spend a couple of slides going over some of our services, especially for anyone who might not be familiar with that. Other than holidays and closings for inclement weather, the library is open 7 days a week or 64 hours a week for 8 months out of the year. That's October through May. And we're open 6 days a week or 60 hours a week for the other 4 months. In addition to weekend hours, the library is also open evenings, and that helps us accommodate a really wide range of lifestyles and work-life schedules, including the staffing for the half day of Sundays. So if we were open all year, the staffing equals out to 24.5 FTE, and that is approximately 32 regular staff who provide service for all of those hours, in service, in person, walk up, text, chat, email services across 4 service desks on 3 floors of a 38,000 square foot building. And in FY22, we had over 500 programs. 404 were in person or hybrid. 108 were only virtual or recorded. In-person programs average about 14 people per event, and from our statistics, we can tell that the recorded programs averaged 24 views within the first 30 days of posting that. Related to the strategic plan, our mission, and core values, we offer programs for all ages and abilities and interests. Just sort of a smattering of them. We have author visits, climate education, community conversations, we have concerts, LGBTQ+ support, STEAM programming. We bring every single 6th grader in the district to the library for a tour. And we also go out to the schools as well. Just to kind of further go on the programming, just so we program in quarters. The winter quarter is December 22 to February 23. There will be 70 children's programs, including an 80-day around the world winter reading program, which is a little bit like our summer reading program. 11 programs for teens, 36 programs for adults, 11 of which are specifically targeted towards older adults. And just an example of some of those upcoming events. We're going to have a program on cemetery art and history. It's for those of you who are interested in grave rubbings and things like that. We have a coding club for students in grades 3 through 12. I think we already had a mystery writers talk. I think that was Monday night. We have a winter concert, the softer side of Celtic. So if you're looking for a little Irish music. We're having an SAT strategy session for teens with the Princeton Review. We have a therapeutic series for therapeutic programs for adults with the McFarland Arts group. We will be doing health benefits counseling and the importance of gratitude. We're also starting a job and career help series where people can call and make an appointment to go over their resume or get help applying for a job, things like that. We're also doing a lot more with environmental, health and wellness, diversity and inclusion, and that's a bit of a summary about our program. Next slide, please. Hopefully this will help you learn. Staff provide support and basic instruction in both our in-library and virtual or digital services. Circulation and electronic usage of library materials has rebounded and is now surpassing that of FY19. Reading continues to be the top circulating library per capita in Noble Network, meaning we check out, download more per person than other libraries in our region. So we are a very active library, and I think that really speaks to the community. It's very engaged, it's very interested. Our physical collection is at stasis. We are not going to get any more room in that building. We know that. So we're kind of in a one item in, one item out kind of growth there, or zero growth. But we do continue to expand those virtual and digital collections, and there's an increasing demand for that. We definitely see that increasing. I just want to point out too that the work doesn't stop with just testing, trialing, licensing of these collections. One of the things that we work through as we have all of this is to try and find ways to reduce barriers to access of these services, right? So we can provide all of the services in the world, but if you can't access it because X, Y, or Z, then it doesn't do you any good as a taxpayer or as a business person or just, as a kid. As Chief Clark mentioned last week, he mentioned those pocket translators, and I think he mentioned the library. Like, we're also piloting that. We've also done some audits of our library website. We have a translation service on that now, as well as an accessibility tool set. So you can click on that and you can adjust it for accessibility. So figuring out accessibility functions for how to find, right? The first problem is how to find the stuff, and the second one is how to access it if you might be having challenges or barriers. So that's an important, I just want to call that out because that's something important that we do in that constant curation and evaluation of the services that we do. Okay, next slide, please. And just to circle back around to our strategic plan, all of that stuff I just talked about were our daily operations, that stuff that we do on the ground, on the floor. We also have a series of overarching larger projects, and these are 7 that we're working on. These are embedded in our strategic plan, and we're almost done with them. First of all, this year we launched a library app. So if you go to your local app store, your iTunes or Android store, you will have a Reading Public Library app. It's sort of a one-stop shopping. You put your digital library card on there. You can access our databases, etc. We just installed exterior after-hours pickup lockers. This was something we went after we started chasing down. Actually, right at COVID, we had a lot of people that were like, it was really nice when you stood outside and you just handed out the books that I had to get. But in all seriousness, even though we're open, let's say October to May, we're open 64 hours, there are definitely people that can't get there, or they wanted to come in early, or they wanna come in late, or they wanna come in Sunday after it is, so you can now choose, rather than picking up your items in the library, you can have them picked up outside the library. I marked partially complete, it's actually pretty much complete, the microfilm digitization. This is a huge project. We just sent out and have completed the scanning of 550 rolls of the Reading Chronicle, the Reading Times, the Reading Times and Chronicle, like all its variations, basically back to 1870. We now have this digitized OCR'd using Abby Fine as an OCR platform, so it is searchable. So we have all of those newspapers available through 2019. We're gonna go back a little bit more and do the Middlesex Journal, and then we're gonna bring it up to 2021 and then progressively do each year. We've been working with Rich Hegarty from the, who's the owner, for the licensing of that. So we're really excited to launch that. It's actually live now. We're doing a soft launch and testing out, but it's pretty cool because if you've ever worked with microfilm, you know how seasick you can get, and it's not really indexed very well. So you're like, I think the kid was on the football team in 1965, but it could have been 64, and I think it was O'Connell, but maybe it was O'Donnell. So this is a big advancement. It was a really big project, and we're very excited to be launching that. A typo that I finally found, because I always hide one in every presentation, is the partially complete EV chargers. I'm just also really excited about this. So we have our level 2 chargers, and they've been used. We see people using them, and I was speaking with RMLD, and we're hoping to get the level 3 in the spring. It's all capped, it's ready to go. So we're excited to do that. Something that's not on here that we're very excited about is our RPL on Wheels book bike. We had hoped to get it in the spring, just a little delayed, so we'll get it in the fall. And we will begin our outreach with the book bike next spring. So that is an overall services review. Next slide, please. My last slide. I'm happy to answer questions about our services, but the library is your space to borrow the unexpected and also to highlight our community partnerships because we certainly do not do these things alone. Most of what we do is in partnership or with the support of not only town departments, but clubs like the Garden Club or the group doing the Reading Art Walk. We're very involved, and we have a lot of people. We are participants as well as partners. So any questions about the FY24 budget or any of the library services?
Questions?
I have a quick question. Before, I know we're open Sundays now.
Yep.
Was there a time we weren't open Sundays?
Yeah, there was 1 year that we were not open Sundays because we didn't have the budget for it.
Right. And so have you tracked, been able to compare and contrast the Sunday,
We definitely track how many people come in, and that is, so in I'm gonna get this wrong, in FY18 was the year that we were closed. So FY17, we were open on Sundays. FY18, we were closed. Obviously, we don't have any data from that. What I do have is a whole list of people who complained about not being open on Sundays.
Right.
Then FY19, we brought it back and it was well used, considering it's only 4 hours. The people who come in there, it's a different type of user. We do not have the families coming in to play and to find something, do jumping bean story times. A lot of the people that would come in were very like, I really want quiet, I want to browse, I want to study, I gotta get this report ready, that kind of thing. Per hour, it is definitely less than Saturday, which is a little bit more busy, but it is definitely worthwhile. I mean, I found it to be worthwhile. If we didn't have those hours, I'm not sure if that's what you're really asking me, but I do think it's a valuable service. It's not required. It's just something that we provide as a to be full service.
No, thank you. I just remember when it came up years ago because of and I'm glad it's getting used.
Yeah.
That there was some discussion with the time and a half thing because it's Sunday.
Yep.
And now that's officially going away January 1st anyway.
It's certainly not required, yeah.
Right.
We
right.
will still do that because it's not built into their I would like to point out right now that the library is there's not a union in the library. I'll just leave that where it is. Right now, we have premium pay for Sundays. Sundays are volunteer. We also hire substitutes for for Sundays. Because it is acquired today, we don't need a full complement, but there is a minimum staffing that we require for the building to be open. Should staffing go below that, I would have to close that.
That's what I was gonna ask. Where is the minimum
Yeah.
staffing compared? Is it 2 people or 3 people?
You know what, for safety and security reasons, just
Okay.
have faith that I know what the
Okay.
minimum staffing requirement is.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
so that's not just a matter of service. If it was just a matter of, if we have 15 people, we need one person for every 50 people that came in. I mean, that's definitely one way we could look at it, but we try to look at it also not just about the service, but the fact that it is 3 floors and 38,000 square feet.
Yeah,
So we do kind of take into consideration the safety of our, both our patrons and our citizens. So we have minimum staffing. Requiring Sundays and Saturdays would definitely change the dynamic of how we schedule. Live, even though it's not required, I strongly recommend and think that we are a better workplace for paying premium pay. It's difficult to get people to work on Sundays. It is difficult to get people to work on Saturdays during the summer, but we are open on Saturdays during the summer, and that is not premium pay. So for the people who already work, and we have increased, we have some people that do work 37 and a half hours a week, having them work Sunday would automatically kick them into premium
yeah,
pay.
right.
So.
No, I'm glad it's getting used. I mean,
Yeah, no, it is. It's a tough call. We didn't have enough, and that was the money for that was included in the override that failed in the past.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Amy, for the presentation, and you being here last week doesn't go unnoticed, even though, it's the small things that I notice, I guess. Maybe somebody else did, but I appreciate you staying for everyone here last time around. Couple questions. What is reference assistance? That's $210,000.
Oh, what is a reference question? It's basically just people that call that, I think, what is it, $400? What is it, like $4 a?
21,000 transactions, $210,000 value.
Yep. Right, so the reference questions are, hi, I need to write a report on X, Y, or Z. Can you please help me? Or so it's any question that we would get. Usually research, but often can be just reference, which we refer to that. And so how do we put a price on that, which is usually questions, $10 pop. It's just sort of a random number. I mean, we could take the entire $210,000 out of that equation, and you would still get well over a fourfold investment.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if you were giving references out to people and somehow
No, it's
charging.
research questions. It's like basically if we assume that you'd paid someone, I don't want to even say minimum wage, but let's say you're paying a professional person, let's just say an average of $25, $35 an hour for something that they were to do. And, takes you 10 minutes to answer a question, that would be $10.
So hypothetically, on the wacky bird feeder water fountain thing that's out here that just looks dilapidated and never used again, I could call up the library and ask them how that even got there in the first place.
You could. I mean, I don't know if anyone would have the answer. We do have a local history librarian. We also have 550 rolls of digitized microfilm that you could search through and do your research. But yeah, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of local history research, actually.
And I would say the microfilm thing definitely seems like a pretty significant, I guess, history kind of saving thing. Because as time goes on, you just think that everything just gets destroyed or whatever ends up happening. So it's good that at least we have copies of it.
Well, and to be fair, I want to be very realistic that, just because we have it digital doesn't mean that it's, digitization has its own, wear rate. So, we will not get rid of the microfilm. We will always hold on to microfilm. With physical material, the more you use it, the more it wears down. So our goal is to keep all of our microfilm in a safe, dry, cool location, so that should there ever be problem or degradation from the scans, that we would have a backup to rescan.
And then on the salaries and all those numbers there, those include the pay and class differences now? I will say also that the library's event section on the website and whatnot is probably the best, I think, in Massachusetts at this point for the amount of events that you have there, scheduling and whatnot compared to like other libraries or other, even the town's calendar. It's just night and day better than that. So it's good to see that. Is that one of the licensing fees that you have to pay, or how is?
Yeah, so in the general expenses where you see, yeah, it just says software licensing.
70,000 to 69.
Big bucket, which is a big bucket. That includes our Noble membership, which is our library catalog, patron records, all that other stuff. But yeah, it's things like our, that's our room management software, that's our event management software. We also use it for appointments and things like that. It's one of the services we use for pickup and drop off. That's also where like costs for our website go, and there's all these, all of the little licensing things that we have, tracking software for our data, because, you have to pay to track the data so that you can make, so you can convince people to give you money to have the data. So yeah, that's kind of a bigger bucket. And so that's software licensing. There's a myriad of stuff that comes out of there. Museum pass management software comes out of there too.
And then my last question, I mentioned to Chief Clark last week about the safety and security of the schools, et cetera. So the library goes through similar kind of safety and security?
Yep. We definitely do. Shout out to Chief Burns and his emergency management system. We file a safety plan and emergency response guide with the fire department every year. Well, actually, it gets updated, so we have emergency things. That plan is reviewed not only by Chief Burns and his EMS group, his emergency management team, but Christine Amendola has been working with us on various other procedures and guides, and we go through, our staff go through periodic training, safety training, just as the town goes through safety training as well. So it's really important that we know how to respond and who to call in a crisis. So we have everything from what happens if it's flooding, to what happens if it's fire, to what happens to a missing person, to what happens to, so we have a lot of those processes in place.
And then how are query checks and whatnot handled there? All employees are query checked?
That's an HR
All
question.
employees, yes.
And then are all volunteers?
Volunteers, so a query check, which is for those of you who don't know, a query check is a criminal records check. They are required when people are dealing with a vulnerable, and especially if you're dealing one-on-one with a vulnerable population. So, for example, certain volunteers are definitely query checked. So if you would like to be a driver and bring books to a homebound service person, you would be query checked.
So use an example, you brought up the coding class, so that is taught by a librarian, I believe is.
Actually, I can't speak to that one, whether it is, but if there is a provider, if we're doing a program, so let's say the therapeutic programming for adults, very vulnerable population. They are not, first of all, they are not left one-on-one. Okay? So at a story time, there's usually a caregiver. We don't let little 2-year-olds just walk in the library and sit down at story time. We need to have a caregiver. We always have a librarian present at all of our programs. So at no time is anybody ever left unattended with someone in a vulnerable population. Having said that, we have a librarian go to a mystery night with Hank Philippi Ryan and blah, 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 blah. We're not really concerned that adults, like say people in this room, are a vulnerable population. It is just our standard practice to always have a staff member in all of our programs.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I know in order for me to volunteer for like Saturday Night Lights coaching or the turkey trot at Birch Meadow and whatnot, I had to obviously pass a query check and all that, and I think I'd be exempt, but apparently not. So yeah, that's just why I brought it up, because I just wanted to just make sure that everybody in similar circumstances myself, if I was at the library giving a coding class or whatever to kids, I believe it is a teacher, because I looked it up for my daughter doing it because she's into all this kind of stuff. So just to confirm that if that person wasn't an employee of the library, they would be checked if it was a vulnerable population?
No, only if they're left one-to-one.
Is there an example of that, I guess, of what one-to-one is?
If you are delivering a book
Oh,
to a homebound person, you are an unsupervised person who could prey on a vulnerable person. You have no supervision, there's nobody else there to witness what you do.
Mhm.
Right. So, don't get me wrong, I mean, and, you know, anybody will tell you that we do not query check anyone who comes into the building, so.
Oh, no, I'm not, I would never expect this,
So you
just
are,
like here.
right, but I guess what I'm saying is that you are more likely to be alone with someone when you're just hanging out at the library and you go to the bathroom than you are to be alone with someone in a, you know, a baby storage center.
No, I, just like I had mentioned, my only concern is when someone would be, you know, interacting with
Right.
anyone under 18. I guess I'm not at that age limit where it's
Yeah.
65 plus or whatever.
Sure.
That's just kind of where I'm at, and just making sure that that's happening. I don't know if there's where we don't have to do it. I would just like to think that we,
No, we don't, and I don't think that would be really a reasonable request to do a query check. First of all, it's not required. It is not required. There is a cost to it, but also the person would have to give us their license number and the social security, and there's a lot of private information that's not required to do that. There's no need to do that. So we do not query check all vendors.
but it would be a policy decision though in the end, whether or not you did or did not.
We could, but I also want to point out too, I can run a query check on you. And I want you to tell me what would be in your query check.
I had a 93 black Ford Mustang. I don't know what else is going to be in there. I've submitted a query check
Right.
probably about a dozen times, but.
So I guess my question, I mean, we don't have to debate this because
No, yes.
But
no,
my point is that, let's say I do a query check on you and when you were 25, you were pulled in and you were convicted of having marijuana. Does that mean I should not let you? Like, what is the thread, right? So you can be a teacher and have a criminal record, but the query check is done for a very specific purpose in the children's, in that, you know. So if you had a record of abusive behavior, would we necessarily let you work with the vulnerable population? Probably not. But you could do something else. You could also still be employed by the town. So I just want to be clear about what a query check does. I think there's an assumption that when you do a query check, you're checking to see if someone's a sex offender.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. But query checks are done for a number of reasons. And you can actually have a criminal record and show up on your query check and still have a job and still work with children and still work with elders. So I just want to be very clear about what the scope and context of query check is.
I guess I would just go towards whatever the school was doing. So however they handle it is where I'd like to see it reciprocated, but it doesn't look like that would happen.
Probably not. Public libraries are very, very different and different laws apply, so. And that's one of the glory things. It's one of the reasons why we have an executive and legislative branch to our government. We have different checks and balances. There are things that you can do at a public library that you can't do in a school. There are things that you're gonna get at school that you cannot get at a public library. So I think there are similarities 100%, but there are different roles. And I think it's really important to remember and think about not the history, but also the future of where we're going and the importance of those roles that we play, because things are changing. So just, you know, it's a different world. It's not your grandmother's library. That's 100% sure.
Thank you much.
Jay?
Yeah, just one question on the expenses slide.
Yes.
Amy, you had mentioned that the reason for the decrease in the technology expense was kind of getting ahead of the lifespan of
Yes.
devices. Is that the case for the 15% decrease in supplies and equipment as well?
Yeah, I think it, you know, it could also just be, we kind of joke every once in a while, it's like, oh, the tape budget's gone, no more taping the books. We have definitely been through tight expense times, and we know where we can cut back. I don't want to say that we rely on the kindness of others, but we do rely on the kindness of others, and just sort of a very random example, we would not have ever been able to do it. Someone just gave us 500 reams of paper, right? They were clearing out their office, and they're like, do you have any use for it? I'm like, sure, that's a whole bunch of money right there that I don't have to spend to supply, to put into our copiers, to put into our printers and all of that. So that kind of thing, you know, I was like, oh, yep, take $500 off our expense budgets for FY24.
Right.
I'm not gonna get that every year, but
Okay.
yeah, little things like that make it very easy.
Okay, Thank you, that's all.
Good question. Accessibility in terms of rooms and sound.
Yes,
So I think I know
Yeah.
that the capability is there.
yeah, we have those running, we have the FM system running now. And we do offer it for people to use. It's only in the community room. One of our goals is to have the FM system also to see if we can do, if not the FM system, something similar like that in the conference room. But the community room lends itself to it because it already has the built-in sound system and it's a big room. So you know, when when assistive listening is a need and not just could you speak up, we do have the microphones and the FM system to deal with that.
Got it.
I highly recommend it. It's great.
One of the things we're dealing with in this room is when people sit in the back, they can't hear us from here. So
Yeah.
we're working on amplification.
Yeah.
In the community room, is there amplification? Are there
Yeah.
speakers? So is there a way to train people to know how to use it? Because I think all the meetings I've attended, we haven't been able to utilize it.
Well, we don't. We have the FM system is different from the if you're just talking about microphones and speakers, yeah, we have microphones and speakers. You just have to actually get people to use them. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have set up the microphones plenty of times, and then the person's like, I'm not comfortable using the microphone, so I'm just gonna come over here. Can everybody hear me in the back? And then you're like, yes, except for the one person over there who's sitting right in front of them and can't hear. So it's something that we're trying to be a little more sensitive to and more accommodating to. It's a complex issue because there are people that have specific, auditory disabilities, and then there are people who are, there's a fan going and there's needs more sound baffling or something like that, so.
Cool. It sounds like it's a training issue a little bit also in terms of the users.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been able to do it, and it would be great. And we're
Yeah.
hearing from a number of people now that they would really appreciate amplification.
Most of the FM systems too will work if you go that way, which doesn't necessarily amplify the FM system. It actually hooks into. It's either you put on your own hearing aid or you can hook your hearing aid into the FM system.
Yep.
So that's really
Those
important.
are awesome. I also want to capture the group that doesn't have hearing assistive devices, but is having trouble hearing.
So microphone. None of you have microphones.
We're going to very soon.
over it.
So that's my thing. Any other questions? Hi, Karen.
Hi, sorry I'm late. Not a question, but just a comment that I'm a huge user of your online resources, and I want to commend you on the reliability, which is approaching that of RMLD, if not better. So whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or the books I read online, you guys are there like 99.9% of the time.
Probably a
And
good time to tell you that the system might be down tomorrow, but.
thank you. Yeah, good. Thanks for the heads up. But no, so as the world changes and the library changes, we appreciate that, and we start treating you like a utility. So I appreciate your reliability.
Well, and speaking of that, I didn't mention this, but just so you know that the town does not pay for the Wi-Fi and the network usage for the public. That is something that is subsidized through our Noble membership and through state. It's like this whole complicated thing that we get. But our consortium Noble supplies all the switches and the maintenance and all of that. And it's it's like 300 Mbps or something like that, MPPs, and it's good, but we don't pay a penny for that. That's part of the bigger LSTA and state MBLC grants that we get. So that's a service that we offer that does not cost the town anything but being certified, remaining certified and in good standing, and eligible for state aid. That's one of the things we get through that. So,
Good to know.
all right.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Joe, are you with us online?
I'm here.
Nice to hear you. And see you. Oh, hear you. And see
There
you.
I am. Thank you for having me. Kevin Gabuzia is also on the call with me tonight. I just wanted to give folks a quick overview of the facilities department before we get into the discussion. The facilities department, many of you know, but some don't know, has 3 divisions within it. The town core facilities, which is the physical plant of all the buildings, town and school buildings that we maintain. The town facilities budget, which is primarily made up of custodial, cleaning supplies, and outsourced cleaning. And then, this is a separate budget, is the school facilities budget that we manage, that is under the school department's budget also. So we're not gonna be talking about that tonight, that's gonna come up in January, but that's really what facilities does here in the town of Reading. Tonight's presentation is a little different than what was submitted to you last week. I'm gonna go through that in detail. We've made some adjustments to the accommodated costs and in the core facilities budget, as well as an ask for an additional custodian on the town, in the town facilities budget was removed, and I'll get into that and we'll go through it. We're gonna go over work orders by location, work order, staff, and vendor comparison to show you where we're tracking what we do. Gonna talk a little bit about the preventive maintenance program that we have for all town and school buildings, and we'll go over the organizational chart and then wrap it up with questions. Okay, yeah. So this first slide here represents the core facilities budget summary for salaries. It's up 5.5%. There is collective bargaining and step increases built into this. And we also added money in here for overtime. A lot of the overtime that we provide, whether it's snow removal or emergency callbacks and things of that nature, but a lot of that stuff is not billable when we cover things like Town Day, Friends and Family Day, things that happen on the town common, and then also represented in that increase that you're seeing, that 45% increase, is the increase in wages for the union guys. So overall, the core facilities wages are up 5.5%. Okay, Caitlin. So this is the biggest difference that you're going to see right on this first slide here as far as the expenses go. The accommodated expenses are up 12.31%. I can give you a breakdown. What you had received prior to this included a increase for electricity, which we're going to be experiencing in FY24. As well as water and sewer and natural gas. But after looking at it a little further and talking with the town accountant and Fidel, the increase that we have built in an increase for next year for natural gas, which drove this number up higher. It's only a partial year increase because of when our agreement ends for the natural gas contract that we have. Right now, we're paying $4.60 a decatherm for natural gas. In FY25, that price will go up to $6.16 a decatherm. It represents a 43% increase in natural gas, okay? But we're taking a small increase on that. I believe this budget does represent a 4% increase in natural gas, 20% increase in electricity, and a 4.75% increase in water and sewer. So that's really and that's a big driver in our budget if you look at the overall number for accommodated expenses. Core maintenance and repairs is up 7.94%. I don't have to tell everybody that they know that construction materials have gone up quite a bit in the last few years. And we're feeling that down there for just about every trade that we have report to us over there. Electrical expenses we're level funding that. Elevator expenses is going up 20%. A lot of that has to do with new state mandated regulations for inspections and pre-inspections that happen on elevator and cars. So that number is going up. The core alarm expenses, this line right here represents the security systems that are installed in all the schools and all the town buildings, 13 total. This represents a service contract. It's been competitively bid out. It's a 3-year contract, and this is to maintain the equipment that we just installed 2 years ago at all the town and school buildings. Pest management services, we've asked for an increase on that in this level 1 budget of 40%. We've seen a big uptick in the need for more preventive pest management services across the board in town. And then core miscellaneous expenses is going up 6.52%. which relates to the first item I talked to you about, which is the cost of the materials that we stock in the shop to do the repairs in the building. So the overall expense increase is 12%, and the combination of the two for the core, for the wages and the expenses, is up 10.66%. Okay, Caitlin. This is the town facilities budget. Like I said, this represents town custodial staff, as well as outsourced cleaning and the cleaning supplies that we use to clean the buildings. It's an overall negative 1.83% increase. The reason for that is a vacation and sick buyback that we had budgeted last year. We're not going to be needing to budget for it this year, which dropped that number down. Other than that, that budget is level funded, other than the increase in the steps and the COLA for the union folks. Okay, Caitlin. And again, now if you look at the combination of the two, the overall increase is 9.38%. And again, the school budget is separate. So this next slide right here is something we show every year. Is how we track work orders and where we're going with work orders. You can see that the Reading Memorial High School is way out in front this year. A lot of that has to do with a lot of work we did in the building, and primarily increased participation with the new administration over there in the high school, which is great. They're using the work order system. We're getting a lot of good feedback from people, and we're getting people to, report work orders, put them in the system, and we are able to better track where our guys are going and where the outside vendors are going on a day-to-day basis. There's an increase of 560 work orders over FY21. And then this slide right here, again, just shows you the comparison of in-house and then outsourced labor. So in FY21, we did 23% of the 23% of the work orders were completed by outsourced labor, and 77 was in-house. This year, that number dropped a little bit, and we handled more in-house. And what we're trying to do to save money is we have a plumber, an electrician, and two very skilled carpenters that work for us, and we try to use them, especially the plumber and the electrician, for doing as much of the HVAC work as we can, so that we don't have to pay the prevailing wage every time we pick up the phone. So it's a way we try to save money and sort of diagnose problems, and our assistant director does a great job at being innovative and using our own in-house staff to save money. Okay, and I won't go through this slide in detail, but this just gives you an idea what the preventive maintenance program is made up of. This is what we do. This is one of the big programs that we run to maintain all the systems across the board in the town of Reading. That's what the day-to-day looks like, and all those activities happen while people are in the buildings. We try to do a lot of the work in the schools off cycle, but this work does happen. It's almost like doing open heart surgery on someone while they're walking around. So we try to get every bit of time utilized to get all this work done. And just so you're all aware, I did talk about there are no vacancies right now. We're fully staffed. This just gives you a quick overview of the makeup of the department. On the left side, we've got 4 full-time maintenance technicians, 4 full-time town custodians, and then all the trades below that you see. And then on the school side, we have 18 full-time custodians, event technicians, the cleaning contract, and a half-time courier that goes between the town and the school buildings. And that's everything. Unless you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm gonna look left first this time. Jackie or Karen?
Okay, thank you.
I'll look right. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Joe. I guess first off, we gotta build a natural gas tank somewhere, a line in Reading, in order to be competitive in the future, because that just scares me, the numbers there. So in terms of the HVAC though, did that go up that one year because of COVID, because we had to add some additional stuff? Because it like doubled?
It did. Yeah, we're using MERV 13 filters now across the board on 90% of our equipment that allows us to use MERV 13. And that translates into a higher cost for the HVAC lines, as well as supplying all the filters that are installed in the school building by the custodians and on the town building. So we have seen a sharp uptick in that, in the cost for that. The filters cost around 40% more per filter, just to give you an idea.
And
we're not planning on going back anytime soon. We are still using the MERV 13s.
And is that the cause for the work orders almost doubling at the school? Is that because specifically?
At the high school? Are you talking about the high school?
Yes. Yep, because that's up to like 800 this
Well,
year.
there's a number of things in there. We did a lot of painting work at the Reading Memorial High School this year. The school technology department did a big rollout of smart boards and projectors in the schools. So that drove that number up. A lot of it, there were some other mechanical repairs we did on some rooftop equipment over there. And I think also just in general, the new high school principal is really engaged, and they have great participation up there. Big encouragement to put a work order in, communicate if you have a need. So that also, we see that happen when people use the system like it should be, if you will.
And then what is the Lions Den on the work order thing?
The Lions Den is what we call I call it the snack shack. The Lions Den is the building right at the track, and we do work in that building right there. Does produce work orders. We did a lot of work on that building that was outside the scope of work for the Turf One project. There was some work included under the contract, but there was a great deal of work that we decided to take on. Put new doors in the building. We did a lot of work on the front of the building, the rear of the building. So we spent quite a bit of time over there, knowing that we could get it done cheaper than it was if it was done under the contract as a change order. So we took it on and we got that work done.
And then my last question is, where is there actually an acid waste tank? Because there's two of them listed here.
Acid waste tanks are at the high school and the Coolidge Middle School.
All right. And thank you for just keeping Killam as well maintained as you and your crew has over the course of its lifetime. So thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, any questions?
Just a quick question, Joe, thanks. Are things calming down? I mean, I hate to ask this, have you asked for enough? Meaning vendor costs, supply costs, what are you seeing in the industry or your other facilities directors in other towns? Are you getting a sense that things are calming down or not yet?
Well, we got great results back on the Parker roof. We originally had thought we were going to be going to November town meeting and asking for more money. That came in, the pricing on that project came in real favorable. So we are seeing things soften up a little bit. I'm hearing from different people that certain pricing is softening up a little bit. There is still a lot of work out there, but it's slowing down a little bit. And even at the supply houses, one of our guys came in the other day with some parts that he had purchased about 6 months ago, and he paid quite a bit less for the same parts that we had been paying like 40 or 50% more for last year. So in that respect, I think things are calming down a little bit. We're busy down there, though. I will tell you that, the buildings are in great shape, and people seem to forget. They think the high school is still brand new, but the high school was finished in 2005. So it's a 17-year-old building. So we're funded correctly to do the job. When something breaks, we're able to fix it. My only wish is that that continues on, that Reading has always done that since I've been here in 17 years, is, you know, to take the facility serious and give us the money we need to fix things when they break down, and to run a good preventive maintenance program, because that's really the key to it.
Yeah.
We don't have a crystal ball, we don't know when things are gonna break, but we do our very best to maintain the equipment and keep it running well.
All right, thank you.
Joe,
Thank you.
couple of quick questions. One on the alarm expense, so that's kind of our new baseline, given a lot of the security equipment we've been putting in, is that where we are?
That's correct, and you know, it's a very important. It was competitively bid out, and it is to maintain the cameras and the access systems and some other things. That is the amount of money that we have to spend every year. What's extra is stuff that's, you know, that's like the PM contract, I'll put it that way, if that makes sense. That's the PM, the equipment to go do like health checks on the equipment. If something breaks, then that becomes an extra cost for us that we try to, but again, the whole key is having a good preventive maintenance program to catch things before they become a problem. So to answer your question, yeah, that's gonna be an ongoing cost.
Okay, and one other question, you mentioned on electricity, a 20% increase. I'm assuming that's cost, not consumption?
That's cost, that's correct. And we're hoping, we just finished up the LED project on all the town and school buildings with Noresco. We're still finishing, the project's not completely done, but we'll be done. But the LED portion is done, so we're hoping that those savings will translate into, you know, it's gonna translate into dollar savings, and hopefully that going forward will sort of mitigate that 20% increase that we're gonna be paying in '24.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris has one more question.
Yeah, just to follow up on Mark's, so the alarm expenses, that's 84,900, is included in the alarm is the security cameras as well in that
Correct.
expense. So does that have to deal with software licensing going forward, or I'm just trying to,
That's a very good question. So that line right there that you're looking at is what's in the alarm line, just to be clear, is also fire alarm in there and security, okay? It's in one group, and we've collapsed these lines because if I showed you my whole budget, it would be very confusing. The software licenses we have right now in place for the system that we have are good through, it was a 5-year license we had. It's too soon right now to get really good pricing, but I have spoken to Fidel and to Kevin Furler about this. We're gonna get an idea of what those renewals are gonna cost in FY '25. And that would be under the technology budget, it wouldn't fall under facilities.
all right, so I know you mentioned, so the licensing isn't included in that yet. So are people just doing maintenance on the security cameras, or what is being done for the cost? Is it a monthly contract?
I can talk to you offline on that, and I'm not trying to be snarky with you, but I'd rather not tell you what is being done for a lot of reasons, because it is security. Offline, I could have a conversation with you and talk to you about what that includes and what the cost is for that. There are 3 different areas that we concentrate on.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
All right, thanks, Joe.
All right,
Well
thank
said.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon, you're up.
Share my screen.
Sharon is upstairs.
Can you see my screen?
We have the wrong view, though. We're seeing presenter view instead of
Oh,
presentation.
better?
Yes,
Thank you.
got it.
Sorry about that. I've got 2 screens, so it gets confusing. So I'm going to start by presenting the proposed fiscal '24 finance budget, and then when we're done with that, I'll go over the slides for the shared costs. So this is the org chart for the finance department. As always, there's the three divisions that make up the finance department. There's general finance, which is the treasury and collections, accounting, and assessing. And you'll notice there's several boards that we work directly with or serve in some way, shape, or form. The finance department has 12.93 FTEs, 12.43 is in general finance, 4 in accounting, and 2.5 in assessing, and that does not include our regionalized assessor. He's an employee of Wakefield, so he's not included in our FTEs, but he is not shown in these numbers. But he is working for us. These are the general key responsibilities for the general finance area. So in the treasury function, we do payroll bi-weekly for 1,200 to 1,300 employees. We do cash management and reconciliation for the whole town, RMLC, and retirement as well. We do payroll for them as well. State and federal reporting, debt issuance and management. In the collectors area, we do the quarterly property tax billing for over 9,000 properties, as well as the quarterly utility billings for those properties. We manage the tax title, and then we also process about 129,000 payments a year through the collector's office. The assessing key responsibilities are valuation of the real and personal property. They also do field review and data collection and enter that information into the property cards. They administer the statutory and local property tax exemption. They bill 24,000 plus motor vehicle excise bills every year, and they also handle the abatement for both motor vehicle and property tax. They do maintenance of property tax records, and then they also do the tax classification hearings with the select board and for the general public. They also advertise and administer our senior tax relief program. We did have 228 applicants this year and 221 approvals. The model that we use here in Reading is being considered a model for the state and may be approved at the state level, so it's something to be proud of. We think we're in our 6th or 7th year of this program, and it's definitely something that others are looking at and saying that that's a great way of doing it, so that's something we should be proud of. Our accounting responsibilities, so we do all the invoice processing and payment in the accounting office, about 26,000 bills a year, about 500 a week. And then we do all the monthly budget reporting for the department heads. And then we also have our budget oversight and support that we do to help the department heads. We also do Munis support and security settings, so all of the users in the accounting department are power users for Munis, so they're able to help people when they encounter problems. And then I also manage all the security settings to make sure that nobody has access to information they don't need to see. I do the tax rate setting process with the assessor and DOR, so that's part of our process. We also do the free cash calculation and certification with DOR, Schedule A reporting to DOR, and then financial analysis and reporting, and lastly, compilation of audit requests for the auditors. So this is the summary of the finance budget. It's going at 4.1%, 8.3% in accounting, 1.8% in assessing, and 2.2% in general finance. And I'll get into the key areas. I'm driving that 8.3 in the future slide. This is the finance salaries budget at 4.4%. So all of the staff in finance are non-union employees, and as you're aware, we just did a paying class study where many of our employees were addressed at November town meeting. But in fiscal '24, all of our staff will be moving to a new chart based on the performance recommendation. And no management staff was considered in the November town meeting paying class change. So you'll see that if there's management staff being considered in paying class adjustments, they're going to happen in fiscal '24. So my position was highlighted as one that needed to be addressed. and also the assistant department head, the treasurer, assistant CFO for a position needed to be addressed. So the accounting area, you see 8.2, that primary was driven by the increases that were proposed related to my position. And also to what we were seeing is if a position hadn't been addressed in November, to place somebody on the new chart in order for them to get the step and the COLA that we're looking to give. Sometimes there was maybe a little bit more than a step just to get them on this new chart. So the proposed budget for non-union staff was supposed to be a one step and one COLA, a 1.25% COLA. The steps used to be 2%. The proposed new salary chart is non-union staff have a step of 2.35% and management staff at 2.5%. So typically you would have seen about 3.6% for non-union for this budget and 3.75 for management staff. But there are changes in here relative to the paying class related to management. And then that other item that causes a little bit of confusion is where you place them on the chart, because you want to give them their full step and their COLA. So in some cases, people got closer to 4% just to get them on the chart, and then next year you'll see it be more normalized. So accounting is at 8.2%, assessing at 4%, and general finance at 1.90. That looks strange that general finance is at 1.9 because our assistant department head is in that general finance area. And that is because within the fiscal 23 budget, there's about $17,000 of ads that were added at November town meeting to cover vacation buybacks we had for people leaving our department, as well as a transitional period for our treasurer to work with our new treasurer, our prior treasurer to work with our new treasurer. So we won't have that in fiscal 24, so the rate of increase looks smaller than it would be otherwise. So our finance expenses budget is up 2.2% over prior year. In the prior year, we did have in the assessing area some one-time needs to do some software bridge work between Patriot Property Software and Munis for personal property, and then they also needed to do more personal property inspections, so they had about $5,000 of additional expenses that they needed. So last year we had kind of scaled back some of our expenses in other areas to try to keep things in line and not increase our budget too much. So in the accounting area, it looks like 14%, it's only $700. We had scaled back about $500 on our professional development last year. And I put it back at $700 increase just because I think a lot of that is going to cost us a little more this year with inflation. The assessing area just 0.2% going up, and that would just be a couple $100 for adding back to professional development costs. General finance is at 5.4%. So there's two areas within general finance where we had taken about $750 or $1,000 away, and that would have been printing our printing forms expense, and then tax title expense. And so I looked to increase those back up by $1,000 because they kind of came in very close to budget. So you want to have a little buffer there, especially in the inflation that we're seeing this year. So that's at 5.4%, and then a couple $100 on each one of the professional development line items. So that's what's driving that 5.4. We're trying to build back budget that we cut last year to help the assessing department with the expenses they were seeing. So that's all I have for the finance department, unless you guys have any questions.
Questions, Karen?
I do. Thank you, Sharon. So I'm just trying to get a handle on, so I heard that the step increases will increase from 2% to 2.3%. So I'm wondering about COLA and this inflationary period. So is COLA being adjusted as well? Is the step increase, how is that? Is that a permanent? Is that temporary? I'm just trying to think about the outlook for step increases and COLA increases.
I'll take a stab at it, Sharon. So, as part of the pay and class study, we are essentially making a new chart, right? And we want to keep it to 14 steps. So if you recall, the pay class study had ranges essentially, like each grade start here and then here, right? But a pay chart is a good practice because it's on paper, it's documented, right? And it's foreseeable. So we went from in our previous chart, each step was 2%. So in the new chart, which we'll present it as part of this budget, each step is 2.35%. However, there's some nuances, like in order to balance, right, each grade, we made step 7 higher, right, because in theory, new employees start at at step 1 and they'll hit step 7 midway through their time, right? So a little bump to incentivize employees for sticking around, and the last step also has a higher increase. And that is to recognize that again, those employees who essentially are maxed out, right? So we plan to present the chart to the select board, and you have to approve it, right? Hopefully, once town meeting approves the budget, right? So town meeting approves the dollar amounts, and we plan to come to the select board at that point. So that's the step increases. The COLA changes every year, right? So in FY22 it was 1.75. This year, in order to balance out our budget, we set the COLA at 1.25.
We set the COLA.
We set the COLA, as in me and Sharon.
Okay.
Essentially,
I didn't know that.
1.25. Yeah. So the steps are fixed, if you will. The COLA can change, and has changed. I mean, I remember Amy saying that in some years when the economy was bad, the COLA was 0, right? So that it is possible to change that every year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's what it was. That was a long answer.
Sorry? Nope. That's
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, my question is the same as all the other ones. These figures here include the increase to the pay and class study already applied?
yes, sir.
So, I mean,
We can't hear you, Sharon.
sorry. So.
You're still very soft.
Still very soft, huh? Okay,
Yes.
let's see if I can- You still can't hear me?
You're very far away.
Very far away. Let me pull my laptop closer. Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Better?
Yeah.
Or no? Not really, huh?
Only a little.
You were
I think my-
loud
something
earlier,
changed. I don't
and
know
now
what
you're not.
I think my question was answered, so unless Carlo has something.
I'm good.
Let me ask you a couple of questions if I could. One, do we use electronic billing? Is that an option, bless you, for certain bills? In other words, do we have to put out paper bills for everything?
We do some electronic billing, but a lot of what we're doing with paper printing is a lot of printing checks. And we don't do electronic payments for all of our vendor payments, so a lot of it is printing, check stock and stuff like that. It's not necessarily all invoicing, it's all different types of forms, so it'd be checks, it would be invoices, but as I said, a lot of that is done through invoice, because a lot of people, if you sign up for electronic billing, you get that stuff without having to see the paper. We do have a lot of people who don't participate in that as well, so as time moves on, as more people are accustomed to doing electronic billing, we'll see less and less of the details. But I feel like the checks to pay vendors is a big thing as well.
So 2 questions related to that. One, can we, maybe through the website, push out a little campaign to encourage people,
Sure.
if they'd like to use Invoice Cloud and do things that way? Because I think we'd end up saving money, wouldn't we, actually?
Yeah, we could definitely save money, and I feel like there's been a lot of increase in participation in the Invoice Cloud program since we started. So I feel like they do a push pretty regularly to try and get people to do it, because it also will remind them if they fail to pay something, and something's about to go over to them, they can help. So there's definitely a lot of pluses to using the Invoice Cloud program, so that you can actually get all your bills electronically. It will remind you of the bills when you're overdue.
Cool. And what's stopping us from doing more electronic payments? Why are we still issuing lots of checks?
I think that there's a certain amount of fear about doing a lot of electronic fund transfers for small payments to vendors, because there is quite a bit of fraud when it comes to vendors changing their information in terms of, you get an email that says, okay, we've changed our banking information, and you don't be doing, there's a lot of verification we have to do to make sure that we're not sending them payment to the wrong party. There's a fair amount of fraud that goes on, so we're a little bit hesitant to do a lot of electronic funds transfers for vendors, because so much verification time goes into making changes, making sure that we really are able to vendor.
Fraud is a good reason to hang on.
I wish I could give a better answer, but we do have a fair amount of fear about that, because we get a lot of emails asking you to change a lot of information or trainings to look for what makes it suspicious. But the more you're doing that stuff, the more open you are to that.
Good. Thank you. All right. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Just, once again, to follow up off Mark, can't we just offer like $1 discount to sign up for all electronic stuff? And I mean, it seems negligible of $1, but you'd get a massive bump of people just spending 5 seconds to save $1. And then, like, in the long run, it's gonna save you and the town essentially. Like, I know I'm throwing it out as a low number, but can't we do something?
I don't know, because we're not allowed to pay fees, when people are paying electronic payments, we have to force that to customers. So I hope we could pay them to sign up for something, so because, the revenues that are coming in are supporting our services. So I'm not sure if that's something I certainly would look into. But when there's credit card fees or anything like that, we're not allowed to pay that. We have to push that. So
Yeah, no, just,
I'm not that required.
We have to give out gold stars.
yes, no, just the paperless billing, or like RMLD used to give you pay early and you save 5%. I know we're not gonna offer 5%, because for this kind of stuff, that's crazy, but like sign up for paperless billing and you get $5 off your bill for the year or something to
That's
get
something
people to.
small that we could do to get people on board. I do feel like every year I feel like it's a I feel like we're trying to start situation that's been working. Also, for us, because people are
It's getting worse.
Yeah. Sharon, we're really not able to hear you anymore.
Geez, interesting. Okay, can you hear me now? I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I have like this new camera with a microphone.
Who's your carrier?
Yeah, it was weird. When you first came on, you were loud and clear, and I don't know what happened.
Just come downstairs.
I think you're looking to the paperless billing money thing for me, and we'll see what happens.
I'm sorry that you can't hear me. I'm not sure what's going on.
It actually is very low, and you're about to get into shared costs. I'm wondering if you can kind of move your head in closer or something.
Sorry, Sharon.
I'm
Better.
looking for a screen tester because that's what the camera is. Does that help at all?
No.
No.
It must not be in the screen.
Check
It
the
must.
volume on your computer. I mean, I wonder if you hit it by accident.
I think the volume on the computer.
I wonder.
Guess I could go
It's just
upstairs
weird.
real quick.
That's true. We'll all come upstairs.
Or-
Is it helping with that? Put the volume up to like. No.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Kevin's on. Okay,
Hey,
Kevin's gonna
Kevin.
fix it. So we can hear Kevin.
No, it'll take me about 17 minutes if I come to fix it, so now. But,
The camera that you gave me, but I don't know why they can't hear me.
so I had sent you a couple of, some messages, but probably you're preoccupied with the meeting. near your mute audio button, there should be a little caret for you to select your microphone. That must have changed at some point. I'm unsure how, but
Where do I go to get this?
down the bottom where you'd see like your mute button, audio, video buttons, there should be a little caret next to the audio one. And it should have multiple microphone sources, is my guess.
This is in the Zoom control screen, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Thanks, Mark.
I just have the, he said there's a microphone. Let me try this other one.
It's because you gave me
Oh,
the.
there you go. That's it.
Good.
That's it.
I don't know how we got switched,
Okay, that's
but I'm gonna
good.
show you.
You're too loud, Sharon.
Okay, that's
This is
fine.
what happens when we're using new technology, right?
Thanks, Kevin.
Because he gave me this camera so I didn't have to have my laptop screen open, and this is the first meeting using it, so. Sorry about that. Okay, so, did you want me to move on to shared costs, or do we have more questions?
I think we're ready for shared costs, please.
Let's do that. Sorry about that. And again, we're on the presentation view, so let's go. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, I can't see the whole screen, so let me move you guys, because you're on the side of my screen. Okay, so this is our shared cost, and they're up 2.8%. So benefits are up 4.3, capital is down 4%, and debt is up 1.5%. Vocational schools is up 4%, and obviously FinCom reserves are flat. And for the capital and debt, we've been doing 5.5% as opposed to the 5% of our budget that we typically do, and we've been funding that additional 0.5% out of free cash. And we talked about doing that for another fiscal year. We were supposed to end it in fiscal 24, but fiscal 25, it was really hard to balance, given all the inflation that we saw in the area of capital. And so we actually are requesting to keep it at 5.5 for one more year. So through fiscal 25, hopefully that will help so that we don't have to hold off on a lot of our capital. So benefits are up employee and retiree benefits are up 5.1% to just under $21 million. And you can see that the biggest driving force there under retirement is the pension assessment that's up 6.1%. OPEB and other areas under retirement are flat. Medicare is up 0.5%. Health insurance and life insurance is up 4%. Workers' comp up 1.3%. Indemnification 3.8%. And we're pretty flat on unemployment. These are our capital expenses that we're looking to propose for fiscal 24, down 4% from prior year, and I've listed the projects that we're looking to take on. I don't know if you want me to go through them, but you can see them on the slide. I think we did discuss them at the beginning in the financial forum. Nothing's changed at this point. Debt service is up 1.5% to just under $6.1 million. Within the levy, it's just under $3.4 million, and you can see the breakout of the different types of projects that we have within the levy. And excluded from the levy is just under 2.7 million, and you can see how it breaks out between the school projects, which is Wood End, and the high school, which end in 2024, and the library that ends in 2025. So after 2025, the timing is perfect for Killam because all of this excluded debt will be paid off. So we have our vocational schools up 4%. We have to estimate these figures for enrollment because we don't actually know the actual figures at the time we're building a budget. So you frequently will see us asking at a future town meeting to adjust them as we get more solid numbers from the vocational schools that we use. And FinCom reserves are at 200,000 at this point. So that's a quick review of the shared costs. Do you have any questions for me?
Karen?
Just a quick question to the proposed capital spending. So RPD is looking to get 2 hybrid vehicles, but I don't see it on this list. Was it a different fiscal year or grant funded or?
I think the hybrids were FY22 and they've been bought. they've
Okay.
been purchased.
I feel
They're
like
on
there's a
order.
delay sometimes with
Yeah.
decisions and purchases versus, okay,
No, yeah.
okay, thank you.
They are on order. I think they're being outfitted. So yeah, no, it's I'll check with Chief Clark, but it's already approved, already ordered.
Another fiscal year, no worries, thank you.
Jackie, anything?
Not at the moment.
All right, Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sharon, again. The 140K for Rise Playground improvements are with the thoughts of Killam and Rise and everything getting moved and shuffled around. Would this playground still be used if Rise was no longer at the high school?
I don't know if Joe Huggins is still on the line. I know that it's something that there you go. All right, Joe, take it away. Sorry.
Because it
I'm
is like
sorry, I
a,
walked away from the computer. Could you repeat that question?
yeah, so the Rise Playground improvements for 140 grand, if Rise got moved to Killam or whatever scenario that may or may not happen, is that playground still gonna be utilized over at the high school because it's a high school and then you have like a little kid's playground?
I really can't answer that question. I will tell you that, we have design money, in the capital plan to do a design to replace that. That's what that 140 comes from. But last summer, we had the, maintenance staff buy some, a repair kit, if you will. And we went around and we repaired all the areas that were damaged underneath some of the, structures. You know, just so the kids weren't tripping and falling and, you know, we didn't want anybody to get hurt. So we did add a little bit of life to it. That potentially could come off, but, you know, a new Killam, Fidel, how many years out are we? You know, if that's, I think that's gonna be here for the next 3 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I guess you semi-answered it by patching it somewhat to work, because I see 140 grand for a playground, and I know it's pretty small over there, but obviously you don't want somebody getting hurt. So
Correct.
if you can't wait the 3 years and you've already tried to repair what you have, then it is what it is. But that's it for me.
Thanks, Chris. Carl, anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Sharon, one question. Can you walk us through the pension number? It's a big increase, and is this a series of years that we're kind of working through this? Because I remember we had a really substantial change. Is it 1 year ago or 2? I'm forgetting.
So every 2 years, they do evaluation of where we are with our pension assessment in terms of how close we are to being fully funded. And the last one was done, I think we're due to have another one done this December, but when we did it, there were a lot of changes that were proposed by PERAC, such as decreasing our discount rate significantly. And so it added to our liability quite a bit, and we are so close to being fully funded that in order to not have to push it out long term, we did end up having to push out to 2031. We had to go with increases that were over 6%, you know, for the duration, just to get us to fully funded status by 2031. But as I said, every 2 years they rework that funding schedule based on the performance of our investments, how we perform against assumptions in terms of, you know, what pay increases look like. They may assume 4%, let's say it's 3%, like there's gains and losses that are happening there all the time. But they're always improving certain assumptions like mortality tables, which find people living longer, which only makes our liability bigger. So there's always these assumptions that are ever changing. So every 2 years we do these valuations to get a feel of where we are, like in terms of what we have and what it's going to cost us in the future to you know, pay the pensions for the people that we have. It seems like we're almost always having to push out. Every so many years we have to push out. I mean, we've been at 2029 for so many years, and now we're at 2031. So hopefully it won't be another push out when we get our next valuation, so I can give you an update once I've seen that. But that's the biggest piece, is that we're trying to get fully funded for pensions so we can start redirecting funds towards OPEB. Because we're still just doing about 500,000 on OPEB, and that's not what we need to be doing to fully fund it in a 30-year period.
Got it. And so the rates of return assumptions now, are they, I'm sure you wouldn't call them conservative, but are they more reasonable?
They're low. I want to say that this 7% or 6.75, but the print portfolio almost always, or the average is like a 9%, 8.5% to 9% return. And in the year that they were proposing it, we were seeing much higher returns. So we were just kind of confused why we had to reduce it so drastically. I think it ended up being that we went to 6.75, but I might be wrong, it could be 7. If I'm remembering correctly, there was a lot of discussion back and forth. But it added $10 million to our liability to decrease the discount rate that way, saying that we would only earn 7% as opposed to the 8.5, 9 that they average over the last 30 years. So I was surprised by that, but now looking at the inflationary environment and the way things have been up and down with the stock market, it probably wasn't a bad move.
Okay. And when will you be taking a look again, do you think? You think it's the end of 22 or the end of
They
23?
do it, yeah, December 2022. They will request the data, the census data for our retirees, and they will do another valuation. So the sooner I have information, I'll let you guys know what I'm hearing. Because I usually work with the town manager to determine what can be afforded within our budget. Because as they're trying to put together a funding schedule, I don't want to have us adopt something that will be hard for the town to do.
Good. Okay, thank you. I did have one other question. The capital, where you said it's down 4%, that's compared to this
The
year?
prior year.
And that also includes a lot of the changes that might have been made at town meeting, right? Did we end up taking up capital for 22?
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, thank you. All right, to the summary,
Budget summary.
please.
Ms. Caitlin, please.
I share so you guys can share. Here we
Thank
go.
you. And I sent you the incorrect version, so I apologize. Initially, it was the FY 23 numbers that I sent, so I apologize for that. So next slide, please. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this slide. So what Joe was referring to earlier, right, is that we had a very favorable gas contract, right, that will expire May of 2024. So halfway through, I mean, not halfway through, almost 80% through the fiscal year. In the first round of our financial forecast, we made the assumption that increase was going to hit earlier, and thus have a higher impact on our FY24 budget. So what you see here is essentially is that we have adjusted the gas increase to 4%, correctly assuming that increase will hit May and June of FY24, not the entire year. So it's accurate. On the electric side, we are using a 20% increase, and that is purely RMLSD's fee. So all to say that by making this change, it inflates essentially our budgets. But it doesn't change, obviously, our revenue. It doesn't change our bottom line, as between schools and town, and it doesn't include the usage of free cash, which we received guidance from FinCom. I want to say in October, as we started working on this budget. So I just wanted to kind of highlight and answer any questions right up front, I guess, on that shift that we made.
Well, good.
Okay, next slide, please. So with that said, we're almost there. We are almost there. I feel like by the end of the week we're going to be there. So we're a little bit off. We're trying to fit a few things. So the first thing is, as I shared, this fiscal year, we are incorporating a massive increase in electricity, and somewhat of an increase in natural gas. That natural gas increase is going to get larger in FY25. Hopefully electricity doesn't go up, but obviously, right? Yeah, smart. So just to say that in FY25 these trends will likely continue. We will increase the select board fund from $15,000 to $20,000. That is it's a modest change to the budget. I've touched base with the committees, and they all feel pretty excited. I know that conservation is one of them that hadn't had a budget for a long time, and now they do. I know the Trails Committee is not going to out of the park. So with that said, just increasing from 15,000 that you had in FY 23 to 20,000 in FY 24. The process will stay the same. We'll request that the boards submit their budget request to me in June, and we will present those to the select board in July for an official vote, an official allocation. With that in line, we will increase the town manager reserve fund from $15,000 to $20,000. It was at $20,000 in FY22, but Bob reduced it to $15,000 in FY20. Sorry, in FY23, he reduced it to $15,000 in order to create the select board fund. So, 1 year later, we are going to see if we can fit these extra two. Chief Burns shared in his presentation of a transition plan to increase the ability to supervise multiple events. Like I'll say in Reading, phase 1 is a vehicle which we actually got a vehicle funded in this past November town meeting for $65,000. Phase 2 is an extra $60,000. So we're going to try to see if we can make that work into this budget. And finally, and I think most importantly, Sharon, Susan Botan, our superintendent, and myself have been meeting regularly to see if we can take a big bite, a big chunk into full day kindergarten. We are very hopeful. We think that we can take a big bite. We did add right out of the gate, as we were building the budget, $150,000 into the budget, but we think that we can take a bigger bite at it. And Tom obviously is going to be presenting that to the school committee as he presents the budget. Next slide, please.
Fidel, before you move
Yes.
on, the 88,727 reductions needed, that's assuming you do all the things that you just talked about, that we're only off by 88,727?
That's correct. On top of that.
On top of that?
On top of that,
Those
yes.
are, okay, yeah.
I just, so prior to this year, Select Board hadn't had a line item in a couple of years. I don't know when it disappeared from the budget. Conservation had a line item, or those other committees had budgets. And for whatever reason, Bob said, I'm just throwing them into a line item for the Select Board. Do you remember that? So this is just talking about moving around the buckets of money you've still accounted for in the budget, but I'm a little concerned about setting up different processes for different committees. Why would we do that? Historical Commission has had, whatever, they're $1,500, they're $2,000 for like 100 million years.
Yeah. So we went through it this year. I mean, I think when I started here, that decision had been made, and it had been built into the budget already.
Just that 1 year.
Yeah, right. In FY23, I don't think that it was a bad process. Honestly, I mean, it created a way for the committees to one, think about the request, right? Like how much, what is it for? It came to the select board and you voted on it. I mean,
No, it's fine, but it's not consistent. Like, we have a lot of boards and committees, and we're, for some reason, like conservation, forest, and trails, like have to come and like just. I mean, I suppose at one point, I bet all of the committees came to the select board and said, we need to justify our budget. I'm just like, this was a change in process.
Sure. But those are the only ones with budgets, right? They're the only ones who had budgets. And I thought that
The historical commission has a budget. They didn't.
but part of it was, do you give people the exact same amount every year and it's kind of just keeps going? Or are there reasons why sometimes people might need more one year and less another year to fund a special project as opposed to just kind of level fund? What we heard back from some groups is, well, there are pieces of it that we do need, you have to do that. But the only way that there's an opportunity to do extra things would be if we have the opportunity to move between them.
So let me be clear. So they don't have a budget, and now they have an extra opportunity to come before us and ask for special projects.
that is correct.
Zero budget unless they come before us and ask for money. Climate Advisory has no budget. I'm trying to think, okay, what about all the other boards and committees? Because those aren't the only 3 committees we have.
Right, so the question is, who has projects that need to be funded? And it could be that there are new groups that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I mean, and
The rec committee, does rec committee have a budget? And administrative staff?
they do technically. I mean, it's the
Is it through revolving funds?
I mean, it's yeah. So I will say that we reached out to I think all committees and asked them for feedback, right? I mean, and we heard from the Historical Commission, we heard from Conservation, we heard from the Climate Advisory Committee, we heard from a few people, a few of the committees. Some committees didn't didn't submit anything, but maybe the second round they will.
But so conservation, trails, and forest have no budget to do anything unless they come to us. Historical Commission, I'm pretty sure at least one of those committees has had a budget. I don't remember which one. Trails. Trails has had a $1,500 budget. I've had numerous conversations since 2020 that $1,500 thing, and thank God for the volunteers because we couldn't do what we do. We have people giving us materials, giving us supplies. $1,500 isn't cutting us. Until last year, the previous town manager decided to put trails, forest, and conservation in a select board budget and ask us to vote on it. But only for those committees. Historical Commission, I don't know if they've changed, but they're kind of notorious for, okay, they have a budget and they're very careful about spending it. I'm just trying to think of what other committees there are out there that we serve on. Trust funds, no, that's.
Are you thinking that there needs to be more budget available in total, or it
I
needs
was
to
just
be
like
allocated
thinking
somewhere?
about a consistent process, because last year was not consistent. The Trails Committee had a budget, and all of a sudden they had to come to us and justify and ask for their budget and ask for whatever they needed, and they did come and ask for ARPA funds, which is fine, that was an anomaly.
Right. Yeah, we used to.
Why would we single out 3 committees? Why not all committees? Why not all committees, put everything in the select board budget and everybody come before us?
Totally, yes,
And I'm
I
gonna
agree.
say,
That's what we're
at
gonna
some
do.
point, okay, well, we could
That's
do
what
that.
that's what we did in FY '23.
Mark?
Sorry, Colin. Yeah.
We had a discussion about this as a board, and we all agreed, all 5 of us, that the existing monies that have been requested over the years,
The existing budgets they had.
right,
Yeah.
were not gonna be disrupted
Correct.
at all.
Correct.
So they have their base minimum, and like Mark said, Trails came before us and
To get
asked
their
for more.
base minimum,
No, they asked for more.
They asked for
No,
3,000.
Yeah, they asked for more.
They asked for more.
but they didn't have any budget until they came before us. It's a process change that started last year.
It's true.
Well, ARPA was involved too last year, so that changed
I
things.
know, I'm trying not to think of ARPA, but what Fidel is saying is correct, and I'm just saying, why would we only do that for some committees and not all?
So we did it to all, for all communities, for all committees. I sent out an email to
So for this
our staff
year,
for this year that we're in right now, in FY '23. I sent out I drafted a memo, which I think I I shared with the board that outlined is essentially the process. And in June, we sent an email out to all committees and said, if you have a request, please send it to me by the end of June. By the end of June. And I came to the select board, I want to say with 5 of them, with 5 of them. So it was probably, it was conservation, it was trails, it was forest, historic commission,
Climate has never had a budget, but I was getting emails asking if, they could have a discussion with you about a budget.
Yeah.
So they've never had a budget.
they have a request. So their request was for the town to fund to fund the heat survey, essentially, that they mailed out, and we have fulfilled that request.
Okay, are we forgetting anyone? We only have 4 committees?
No one has come forward. I mean, that's.
Do they realize they don't? It's a process change. So, and I just want to be consistent. I want to treat boards and committees consistently. Some shouldn't have to come and justify their existence, and others get, especially after being funded traditionally for years and years, and then others just get a budget. That is my concern.
So all the committees that had a budget previously, I think the board agreed to fund their budget at the same level as they had as they had before. So that was the floor.
Cemetery trustees, do they have a budget?
I'm not sure about that one. I think they do. They have like a trust.
Library trustees. So that's what I'm saying. We have a page full of
$2
commissions
million
and
budget that you
boards.
presented.
Yeah, but is what you're asking that every committee would have a baseline budget, in which case we're not funding things well enough? Or is it better to set things up so that people are coming in and saying, hey, I've got something I'd like to do, select board, you've got some funds, can I have some?
I'm just not sure we're being consistent. It's not a problem if people have unique needs in any particular year and want to come and ask us, and we have the ability to respond to that. I'm just scanning our list of boards and committees. Celebration Trust Committee, do they have a budget every year? So they're gonna, so that's what I'm saying, like, so it's like, we could send out a big announcement, anybody who had a budget, you don't have it anymore, but come and see the select board, and if you need to do something, we'll do it. But what I heard, and what we did last year, was we said, the town manager said, I'm gonna put $15,000 in the select board line item specifically for the forest, the trails, and conservation. That's what he did. That's what he did. And yeah, you were coming in the middle of it. I don't know why or what. I just wanna be consistent. And I'm not an expert on which all of these committees actually have budgets. But again, the process, either everybody has to come and say, this is what we're thinking of doing this year, and the select board, we're gonna have to allocate for time to hear that kind of stuff. Or another process that is equitable. So this year, what I think I heard you say was forest, trails, conservation, and historical.
I believe that's right.
Climate never had a budget. They were like, can we have a budget? We'd like to do some more things.
So
But what about? Go ahead.
Chris is coming.
Thank you. I guess I can add some clarity to this. Yes, the 3 people that had budgets before, we agreed in air quotes to not go below their funding request in previous years as a board. The reason why this works from going 15 to 20,000 or having it to the select board is if the trails budget was $2,000, then the trails committee is working with $2,000. If the trails committee wants $18,000 and we have it because we're at $20,000 now and nobody else makes another request, then the trails committee could get the $18,000. If they didn't, they're working with $2,000 forever and they'll never win. So by having this in a lump sum like this, in some years you take the ebb and flow. The climate committee, it sounds like Fidel sent out a request to everybody. If they submitted 0 answer, then they get $0. That's the way that it works. I mean, am I mistaken?
No, that's true.
The way that this is
That's how it
going?
works.
So that's, for me, having a pool of this where everybody can come, then it just opens up other avenues for other boards and committees where they might have had $3,000 before, and then they can have $7,000 because they want to do some, you see what I'm saying? I think it's a better process doing it this way.
If there is a committee that I missed, I would be more than happy to reach out to them and not miss them in FY24. I'll say that.
We're just creating a fundamental change in how we do business. There were committees that had budgets. Climate Advisory Committee did not have a budget, is a committee. So there were some committees that had budgets and some committees that didn't. And last year, 3 committees specifically were rolled into a select board line item. But now we are the next budgeting cycle. I'm just saying, I just want to be consistent so I know what the rules are. If someone asks me in a committee, how do I get funded? And I'm like, well, you have a budget, or, oh, you're one of, or I say, any committee who has a project they'd like to do should reach out to Fidel and come before the select board and ask for it.
In July.
That isn't what we've done before. And
That's what we did in
last year
FY23.
it was only 3. It was forest conservation and trails.
So let's close the loop here. So it sounds like there are 2 things. One is if folks have requests, they need to make them. We have a time frame. We have a process we're going to use. Are you asking if other committees that would like to get a regular funding level should have a process?
I asked about the recreation committee, right? Do they not have a budget? I don't know. Does the recreation committee have a budget? Seems like a big one.
No, look, a lot of committees don't have a budget nor need a budget. Rec committee is just advising and saying, do this here, don't do this here, get community input. I mean, that comes out of the.
Well, I'm asking you. I've never served on the
Right, when they're doing a mailing, let's say, when they're mailing to
How
the
do they pay for
butters
the mailing?
through the town budget.
Do they have an annual budget, or do they just come and you ask for a one-off?
The recreation revolving fund pays for
They have a
anything that has to
revolving
do-
fund.
that has to
Okay,
do with
that's
the
what
rec
I'm trying to
department.
understand, how some of these committees are
Rec
funded.
department or rec committee?
Rec committee does not have a budget.
Right, so
Okay.
when a mailing goes, is that the rec department that actually is doing it?
Yeah, the rec department, not the
Yeah.
recreation committee, correct?
Right. I think that's how it's working. So I think now some of those things happen not at the committee level and not committee budgets and
Yeah.
committee expenses, but town departments and town budgets.
And like the Celebration Trust Committee doesn't have a budget?
Well, so if we had to fund every single one of these groups, I think we probably would have some issues.
I mean, we don't, but
Right.
I'm just realizing now there's already inconsistencies in the system.
Well, it sounds like there are groups that have consistently had a budget in the
Yeah,
past.
yep.
The change that was made was to say, initially it was to say, let's just kind of open it up. Then we got some feedback from some of the existing committees who said, wait a second, we plan these activities each year, we can't do that without
The
a budget.
Historical Commission had their consistent budget last year. My
Right.
point is, it wasn't across the board change, it was a specific change. But if we're, now, I don't really have a problem if the board wants to do going forward, those committees that we have a budget, and it sounds like maybe there's 6 committees that have budgets. I don't have a problem if we're changing processes.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we ask Fidel if you could take a look, see what committees are out there that have budgets? What has it been in the past? We know what it was last year. And we can have an agenda item where we can talk through what our thoughts are about it.
Sounds good.
About the process.
All right, thank
Does that
you. I
make
just
sense?
wanna be consistent and I just wanna understand what to tell people.
Yeah, so at the moment, it's reach out to Fidel.
Absolutely.
But let's take a look at that and see who's got budgets and who doesn't. And obviously, it's important what they do with it. So if it's kind of an annual discretionary budget, that may be different for someone who says, wait a second, every year we do A, B, and C, and the only way we do that is with the budget that we have. And where things are, so over the top, we kind of did through this budget, and things that were way over the top, we had a couple of sources. One was ARPA last year, where we did some things, and the other was town meeting. So when, I think, is it phase 1 of the town forest?
Phase 2 and 3. Phase 2
Yeah,
and
so-
3 we funded.
Brush clearing and the.
Right,
you know,
yeah, but I think the first one went through town meeting, and
Yes.
then the more recent one was through ARPA.
Only the second one was through ARPA. I think the third one, they dialed back the money.
Right, that sounds right. So phase 1 was town meeting, phase 2 was ARPA fund. So if it's a big ask, we don't really have the vehicle to do that. But that was a big townwide project, so with the town meeting. But let's bring it to, let's see what's out there and then we can bring it up as a future item.
Absolutely, sounds good.
So on to your next page, sorry.
All right, thank you. So next page, the next page, you've seen before. I mean, it's essentially the I hope to add an FY24 agenda item at the select board, and if there's feedback, please. I'll take it. The school committee is meeting in January. The superintendent has to submit the budget to the town manager by the end of January. The town manager has to submit the budget to FinCom by the end of February, and typically FinCom meets in March ahead of April town meeting. And then on the enterprise side, it's a little bit delayed. Typically, we'd give a little forecast, right, or a projection of where we are towards the end of January. But essentially, we'll add this. We will add this for a formal hearing in May of 2023 to set the rates. Next slide, please, Kim. Next slide, please. I think that's it.
Jackie?
Yeah, just a couple questions as a newbie to this. For the next steps on the budget, for our meeting on January 10th, we're reviewing this budget review agenda item. Are we kind of reviewing all of this at a higher level, and are we voting on anything?
So the select board doesn't vote on the budget, but the by January 10th, I am confident that we'll have a balanced budget, right?
Okay.
So and part of it is that the schools is wrapping up their budget right now, so they can present it to the school committee in January.
Okay, so then can we expect to hear about how you plan to achieve the $88,000 needed in reductions?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
got it.
You could have just add this, I think one other expectation, which is that if we have feedback that we want to share with Fidel, we should do that before that day.
Okay.
Like ASAP, right?
Okay,
And that
thanks.
would be on an individual board member level at this point, other than what we're suggesting now.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Is that? Great. All right, thanks. Intriguing.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. We have two sets of meeting minutes next to go through. The first set is actually in the packet, I believe. It's Amy. So this is from November 15th.
I did not receive any edits in advance
We just saw
to
one.
this set,
Yep.
to this set.
I saw one small thing, which was on the second page you have from Rec Committee Mike Coleman, Coleman. It should be Coltman, Coltman.
Okay, got that.
Other board members, questions, comments?
No.
No. We have a motion on this one, please.
Move to approve the meeting minutes for November 15, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Can we just,
As amended.
take a friendly amendment for Mike Coleman?
Yes, as amended.
Second.
Mike Coleman.
We have a second. Any discussion? Not appearing to take a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. All opposed, we are 5-0. All right, let's go to the other ones, which came separately because of Word doc.
Yes, I got edits from Mark and Jackie on the next set. So these are Mark's edits.
So in the second paragraph, my suggestion was just indicating there was a note in the select board packet that lays out the issues of government speech. That was in the packet that was published.
It's good to me.
Second comment was,
Oh, yeah, someone's last name.
Tim somebody, I didn't know who Tim somebody was. I don't know if anybody caught who that was, the second speaker. Actually, we have it definitely.
We do have the assignment.
We have
You
the
can
name of the assignment. People have signed
Check
it.
that.
So we can find who that last name is.
Tim somebody.
Yep. Can you keep scrolling?
I think that was it.
That was it. Okay.
Okay.
Those.
So everyone good with Mark's edit?
Yep.
Okay. And let me pull up Jackie's. All right. Can you see this?
Yep,
Yes.
looks like the, oh, is it, no, it is a different one. Never mind. Oh, wait.
Can you scroll to the
It's just
changes?
yours, it's without Mark's red line underneath this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just clarified in blue there that that I wasn't saying that new boards and committees do not do statements for inclusive government, but that in my view is that this concept for us is not new because of what we discussed at the June retreat. And you know, just kind of clarifying that it was, I thought it could be helpful, not that there was, you know, not that we need it for what occurred on November 21st.
Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Wait,
Good.
And that was it, I believe.
We have a motion, please.
Yes, move to approve the meeting minutes from November 21st, 2022 as amended.
Is there a second?
second.
Thank you, Karen. Any discussion? Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I would just like to thank Caitlin for the minutes, because it's clear that in those two meetings, to have very minimal edits, I think shows that she's doing a good job in being clear and concise with everything that she does. I anticipated to be discussing this for another 45 minutes, so it's good to see that, you know, what she's doing accurately. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments? Hearing, let's take a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? We are 5-0. All right, next item. So this is, let me read it and we'll talk through. Discussion on ideas about and potential sites for a new senior/community center/municipal building, including any possible new alternatives, and potential vote to authorize town manager to expend funds to explore any such sites. So, we wanted to have the ability, well, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, and I see Jenny and Avery are on the line, just so you know.
Thanks, folks. One of the things that we had wanted to do was to have the ability to talk about some other sites if we had interest. So that's the reason for this agenda item being here. This item is going to be followed by also what we had discussed, which was to have another executive session on purpose 6 related to 17 Harnden. So this being ahead of it is to allow some discussion about potential alternatives. So Avery, you sent out a note to the board talking about RFPs and just to kind of help frame, I guess, that if we were to decide to issue an RFP at some point, just so that we'd understand some of the constraints. And I know there were questions raised, okay, you know, what's RFPs, what's going on here? So as of now, there's nothing going on. But we wanted to talk about other potential sites, and this was an opportunity to be able to do that.
Okay.
So, so one thing that did come up that I think we monitored a little bit was 25 Haven Street, which is the former Rite Aid building. And if there might be any interest in exploring that site or not. According to the MLS listing, I think it's listed right now for $2.7 million. It is a smaller footprint building in terms of what's going on. I think, is it 10,000 square feet roughly? 8,000 square feet even? Yeah, maybe even less than 8,000 square feet. So that was, maybe a potential site that is new from what we had talked about before. And I didn't know if board members wanted to talk about that or other sites, but this is kind of our open session opportunity to bring things up. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I'll speak for me, but Carlo and I both went out to look at the Walgreens, Rite Aid, 25 Haven, last week, and the building is significantly different than obviously the Walgreens. It's in much worse condition. I'm not a building expert, but it had a smell to it, whereas Walgreens did not have a smell. Obviously, it's only a single story. I guess my general idea was that if we were to get it, it would probably have to be knocked down, or you'd have to build a second floor onto it. And then the parking is the other situation. There's like 17 spots. There's some wacky underground PVC piping that's blocked over 2 spots, and so I guess the only saving grace for the parking situation is that section of the train depot over there is somewhat of a ghost town, but you can't expect elderly people to be crossing that street. That's like playing Frogger over there. So,
Currently.
yes, and I had Frogger on the Coleco back in the 80s. So, it always hinges on parking. There's 17 spots. It's not going to be enough. I don't know where we're going to come up with adequate parking anywhere for a building that's going to be sufficient enough. This one has its pros and cons. Obviously, it's cheaper, but I think a lot more work has to be done to go into this one. I just don't know. I don't know. It's if I, having read Evria's thing, I will not complete my sentence that I was going to make, so I will just move on to somebody else. That's where I'm at on this.
Other questions or comments? Karen?
Yeah, I just concur that the building has not been maintained in condition the way Walgreens has, so that anyone who's seen Walgreens and then goes in there can immediately see the difference. The ceilings are falling down. The official square footage are, per the owner, 7,953, so just under 8,000. And I agree with your assessment. I wasn't a Frogger player, but my concern would be, like, there's a lot of parking right across the street, but I don't think the clientele, and whether it's a community center or a senior center, I don't want them running across to get to the activities. That seems dangerous. So that would seem like a drawback to this particular site.
Jackie, anything?
Yeah, I just think it's something worth exploring because it came, I don't know what that was. Worth exploring because a month ago, it wasn't for sale, and now it is. And so, and the prices come down. So, and yes, while I know 17 spots versus 6 spots is more, and the location's different, but as Chris said, any location downtown or near downtown, and that is part of downtown, is gonna have its challenges. It's what ultimately for me is gonna come down to what are the residents in town meeting, what are they willing to spend on a senior / community center in a downtown location versus either a campus setting or renovating the Pleasant Street Center. So it dollars and cents obviously are involved in any decision that we all make, including the voters. But I think it's something worth exploring because it is available, and it's a similar style location to Walgreens. It doesn't have the nice crosswalks and all the lights that deem it safer from crossing from the depot over, but with Lower Haven Street project coming in the years to come, I'm sure that will change. So I just think it's worth exploring, and if the RFP leads nowhere, it leads nowhere. If it's sold next week, it's sold next week. It's kind of out of our control, but
And there could be an opportunity for another municipal purpose, also, in terms of exploring, you know, other than
yeah,
the senior
yeah,
center.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're looking for a new building to house lots of people, but there could be other municipal uses potentially for the building, as an option. I think, you know, one of the reasons for putting it here also is to think about other locations also. You know, what other sites might we be interested in exploring? We've talked about, as you said, Pleasant Street Center expansion, Oakland Road, conceivably Simon's Way, conceivably 17 Harnden, conceivably, you know, here. Are there other things that we want to consider? That's kind of piece one. And then piece two would be, if so, how does the board want to proceed? And, you know, proceeding could be, you know, how do we explore, I guess is really the question. How do we want to do that? And, you know, if it's to be a formal process or real interest in a particular site, then that demands an RFP process that we have to go through. And it may be that this is a good one for us to talk about tonight and not necessarily take action, but be thinking about it and come back in, I guess, early January is really the next meeting, and make a decision. If we were to issue an RFP, it's 30 days that it has to be open, plus whatever time to get it set up and things like that. So just to keep that in the back of our minds also.
Are you saying you want to not even authorize that tonight? You want to wait till January, whatever?
I'm saying we have the choice.
Oh, yeah,
We
okay.
have the choice. We I think there's more discussion to have, but just kind of laying out what are our options. So if we were interested in finding space for particular purposes downtown, again, that's an RFP process. And, or it may be that we kind of take things under consideration. I guess those are the kind of two things we could do. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I guess where I'd stand on this is if we can just use an existing RFP that we had before and it's not gonna really cost us anything, I don't see the downside to actually just doing it then. If it's just time from town staff and whatnot, just so we have it at least done. Because we might get no responses and then that's it.
So the same RFP essentially, but a new kind of issuing or something different, some different description?
I don't know what the description in the previous one was. I noticed you tailored municipal building and I would have my own separate use idea for said building. So I don't know, what was the description of the prior RFP? Just
We happen to have the experts here to help.
I will pull up the RFP that we issued, but I believe that it specifically spoke to a senior center.
So I guess we can expand the scope to municipal building plus alternative or
Municipal use,
municipal use. We'll go with that.
would that be okay, municipal use?
General municipal purposes would be fine.
And this isn't costing us money, like, what's the deal with this, other than staff time?
It's not free. I mean, we're gonna not get something else done while we're working on an RFP.
But it's somewhat of a clone of the prior one though, so.
Pretty much.
And attorney fees. I just want to say, I didn't mention this earlier, but this is literally the same size as the Pleasant Street Center, so unless we're on a real estate buying spree now, I don't really see why we would pursue this. Why would we do this? It's just to find out if they're willing to sell it to us. Well, we already know it's on the market, they'll sell it to us. It's the same size as our current Pleasant Street Center, so I'm not sure how that's a good use of our time or staff's time or attorneys or procurement time.
Only way we can explore it is if we do the RFP.
So I'm just asking, why would you want to explore this when we have a Pleasant Street Center that's the same size, that's too small?
But who's saying we keep this building the same size?
So maybe one of the things to think about is take this up a level. Initially, we talked about doing a feasibility study of lots of different potential locations. Or it would include potentially lots of different locations. It could be that we want to kind of go back to that a little bit and expand our scope and say, hey, you know, we wanna do a feasibility study, we wanna hire somebody to help us with that. If we wanted to look at different potential locations, some of which we own and some of which we don't, I'm looking at Eugenia and Ivrea. Does that require doing an RFP first to be able to do that? Or would doing kind of this big feasibility study allow us to explore places that we don't own?
Well, I think you could do a feasibility study for, the general area. You'd want to avoid doing a feasibility study of like one specific property that you're not under contract with, or that you haven't issued an RFP for, but a feasibility study of your properties that might be available in the area would be fine.
And could we use the information that exists about certain buildings that we don't own?
You could, that can guide your decision about if you want to issue an RFP, what you want to do with your current negotiations, what you want to do with your current buildings. It's all information that you can use to make decisions.
Sorry, Colin, go ahead.
No, I think when Recalc was formed, to kind of Karen's question, not to counter it, but just saying, when Recalc was formed, these two properties did not exist at all. They existed, sorry. They weren't available, or we didn't think that they could be available because we knew Walgreens had a lease. And maybe the general public didn't know, it just sat empty, and why would we do anything about it? But through the RFP process, we found out, for the first RFP for lease, that they were collecting rent. They did have a secure lease, and I kind of always knew that, but that doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden, within the past 6 weeks, during their process of going for permits, 25 Haven Street goes up for sale. And the resident told us about it, or mentioned it at town meeting, I forget the order of things. So, again, that wasn't just, I don't think that was part of Recalc's discussion, because I'm not saying, it couldn't have been, but, and just like there's other properties in town that aren't in downtown, whether it's on Main Street, whether it's, South Main Street, North Main Street, to say, hey, this would be a great location for XYZ. And Recalc was formed to solely focus on a senior/community center with nothing in front of it, planning to spend $300,000 on a feasibility study. So now we have these two parcels, potentially, that could be locations or not. But for me personally, I think an RFP is worth issuing for Haven Street to see where it goes and to see where the property was at.
So just to be clear, if we do an RFP, it's not for Haven Street.
Oh, so include, yeah, sorry.
An RFP with certain requirements.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the hope would be
Yeah.
that we get responses from.
I misspoke, correct. It's just, that's available now. It's on the market, like Karen said, it's on the market where Walgreens wasn't on the market.
Jackie?
Yeah, a couple things. I agree with Carlo that whether it's through a feasibility study or some sort of updated RFP, we need to at least explore 25 Haven Street as an option. I realize that it's got a lot of negatives about it, but I think Walgreens does as well. And also I think from the standpoint of us being prepared for the next discussion and us doing our homework, especially if this has to go before town meeting, which it looks like could very well be headed toward, the next packet where we discuss this should include all of the options in the universe. And I think it's a matter of mostly pulling from previous presentations, whether that's Recalc or, previous select board agendas. So by that, I mean, what was it to renovate Pleasant Street Center? What will it be, generally speaking, to, look at some of these other downtown parcels? I think we need to have that before us again. I don't think we do our homework unless we have that before us and then can present that to town meeting.
And so it may be that the feasibility study is required to be in a position to do
Yep.
exactly that.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, and I think that's a good use of that feasibility study funds.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Where I'm at is I'd rather save the money on the feasibility study. I mean, we've already put the time in, we have Oakland Road, Grove Street, existing Pleasant Street Center, Walgreens, Haven, and Simon's Way. I don't know where else we're just gonna be creating land for sale or land that we own that's gonna be able to support this functionality. So it seems like I just saved us the money of the feasibility study unless someone has another idea.
To be clear, the feasibility study isn't just talking about spaces. It's kind of putting together all of the information, figuring out how it might fit, looking at the pros and cons and being able to present recommendations based upon that. So it's not just kind of taking the information, it's quite an analysis that would be part of that too.
I think based off just those 5-ish things that I just mentioned, we kind of already know it all. Like, we know Walgreens, there's no parking. Haven Street, there's no parking. The existing Pleasant Street Center, there's no parking. Simon's Way, yes, there will be parking, but it costs X amount more. I mean, I don't see why. I guess what it comes down to is if we put the RFP out and nobody replies to it, then there's no 25 Haven. And that is off the table and we're done with it. So that's where I'm at. I'd rather save the money and just put it out there. If nothing comes back, then we call it a day and work with what we have and then perhaps proceed feasibility study or something else.
I'm not sure it's either or. I think no matter what, there's gonna be a feasibility study. The question is kind of when. Do we do it right now? Or do we go and put out another RFP, look at some other sites, potentially see who responds? And then based on what comes back, then somehow we're gonna be doing a feasibility study, looking at one or more locations.
But even if Walgreens hypothetically was $1 million and we could buy it tomorrow, go to town meeting or use any one of the properties we just sold to pay for it, we'd still have to have a feasibility study if that was the perfect fit for the $1 million.
So I would say yes. I would say that we would go through kind of the process that we've been talking about in terms of getting a project manager involved, an architect involved, taking it to the next level. We'd have a lot more involvement, permanent building committee and all sorts of things, but we would be hiring outside resources to get a lot of this stuff done. Is it gonna take $300,000? I don't know. That's what's allocated, but
that seems as if we have something picked out, like, is it feasible to have 25 Haven Street in this scenario? Yes, you have to spend $50 million and then it's feasible based off everything you just said, but it seems like maybe I'm misconstruing things, that a feasibility study to me just seems like, is it feasible to fit within these parameters? But what you're saying is, now we have the building, now we have to do the feasibility study after the fact? I don't know why there'd have to be two done.
so I think the words feasibility study probably have different definitions. And it's probably too narrow for what we really need to do. The notion was we'd look at a lot of different places. That was kind of the initial plan. But we take them to the point where we could present to the community what's going on, which to me, I believe is project manager, architect, lots of information to be able to present to town meeting and then to the voters. So that study would go through and look at different options. Say, here's option A, here's option B. We've been talking about potentially short-circuiting that process with one property, but more conceivably a second property. And so we're gonna spend some money no matter what on quote-unquote feasibility study. I think one of the questions is how broad are we looking? Is there something that's striking us as being so good or so time-sensitive that it means to go kind of jump ahead of the line? And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about for 17 Hart, was gonna do that. Now we're saying, hey, maybe we wanna look at some other things too. And so an RFP is one process we could do to see who wants to respond to us and see if there are other properties that could be available.
Can I offer some insight to the types of feasibility studies you might be considering here?
Please.
Sure. So, because feasibility studies, there's different types of feasibility studies you could seek. And so one could be what buildings in town could possibly be used for some specific purpose, right? And that's sort of a broad brush. Oh, this one could be used, if you do. They probably wouldn't give you very specific examples of how to modify that building or how it would be used, but they could sort of tell you, like, this building might be good for your purpose, this building might not. But then when you actually are under contract with a building or you own a building and you say, I would like to use it for this purpose, you could ask a designer to give you a feasibility study showing you different ways that you could actually meet those needs in that building. And it's a little more detailed. Like, here's a feasibility study of how we, here's option A of how you could meet that purpose, here's option B. And then you would pick one of those and then move on to schematic design and then you go on from there. So
And it
I
could
think
be,
when you say feasibility study, you're talking about maybe two different types of things and for two different purposes.
it could be a $5 million option, a $2 million option, a $10 million option. Could all be part of that too. So I think we're gonna spend money regardless. I think what we're talking about more so though is how do we proceed from here in terms of looking at more properties? And do we wanna put out another solicitation to see what people will offer to us? The other thing we probably ought to be thinking about realistically is that sites could be used for other purposes. So if a developer or an owner decides, hey, I want to do something with this space, they could say, are there folks who want to put residential units here? Or are there folks that want to do other things? And so we should at least be thinking that through in terms of what happens if we're not participating with some of these things.
I'm in the RFP
And
camp.
Mark,
Go ahead, Avery.
I just wanted to add one additional comment. Jenny was talking about those two different types of feasibility studies. So if the board elects to engage in that kind of more broad first type of feasibility study, if there's like 5 properties, for example, that are identified through that process as potentially being suitable to meet the town's needs, there's nothing that prohibits the town from subsequently issuing an RFP and reaching out to those property owners and say, we've issued this RFP, we'd love for you to consider responding. So you can use it as a way to identify which sites in town you may have an interest in and then, request responses from those particular property owners.
Yeah.
So I think we can go one first or the other. But so I think I'm hearing RFP. Carlo, I'm hearing RFP. Jackie?
Well, I guess at this point, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would also ask the question of how the RFP process affects our compliance with state procurement law, especially based on the fact that we're kind of at a fork in the road in terms of looking at a number of different properties.
Aim that one to the left if you would.
Yeah, you can issue multiple RFPs for purchasing real property, that's fine. You just want to make sure that you keep your, the RFPs separate, right? So you're not negotiating under one RFP by using the results from another.
Okay.
You're not sort of conflating the two. You've got your 2 RFP processes, they're both open. There's good policy decisions, for having 2 RFP processes at the same time. We still haven't closed out that other one. They haven't reached a conclusion, so, and there's possibly more sites that you want to look at, which you can't really negotiate with them until they've responded to an RFP. So, that's the avenue to get to a real discussion if you want to get there with those other property owners.
Yes, then in that case, then I'm pro RFP.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this. Thank you, Carlo, for explaining where you were going with this, because I suppose if we lift up the current building and put a garage underneath it and combine it with they say they have 23 parking spaces, and combine it with those parking spaces, and then we completely rebuild floors 1 and 2 to sort of get to where we're at least double that what we have now, then put a green roof on the top so people can have their outdoor space, then possibly, based on what I've heard, then possibly our seniors might be happy with us. But I feel like this is a real long shot. I'm happy to go along with the majority of the board if you just wanna do the RFP.
Okay, and then I think you folks just said one of the things that would happen here is the existing RFP is open and remains open for at least some period of time. we could issue a second and separate RFP and see what kind of interest we get that comes back in. And we could write it in such a way that it was more municipal use as a potential use for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing a whole lot of downside either.
I don't think so.
Okay. So why don't we do that? And so our item allows us to, if we want to do this, yes? Yes, great. Why don't we work on it? So do we just, if we changed, we need to think about how much space we're asking for. The uses, I think we just talked about. So how much space are we talking about? So last one was 5,000 to, was it 5 to 15?
It was 5 to 15. It was in ranges, sorry, no, it was basically a scoring system. So but it was essentially from 5,000 to 20,000. 5,000 to 20,000. I will put it up.
Is there any reason we'd want to change that?
Is there any reason not to make it 40,000 or something? Like, I don't know what other properties, I mean, but would we turn it down because it was 23,000? Like, it just seems like I don't know, do we have to put such a cap on it like that? Can you just put 50,000? Like, what's the downside to
Up
it?
to,
Up to 50,000. 5,000, because you need to have a minimum, obviously. But like, why can't we just do 5 to 50? I don't know if something else magically comes out, like some church is gonna sell their property or something.
How do respondents view something like that if it's a very wide range like that? Do they interpret what we're looking for, or do they just say, well, I've got 5, I've got 50, both of us come in?
I think he was asking.
Yeah, I'm asking anybody who can offer an answer.
So, it really depends on what the town is looking for. So, with an RFP, really, it's up to you to decide what's important. What's helpful usually is to, for you to have something in mind, and then you will tell them that you're going to rank their proposals based on some, scale. So if size is important to you, and like there's some specific sizes, 50,000 square feet, whatever, that might be the most advantageous proposal for that criteria. And then you could say, 40,000 square feet, 30 to 40,000 square feet, less advantageous, 20 to 10,000 square feet, not advantageous. But if you're open to the idea of, a wider range of sizes, that's fine too. You just let them know what it is you're looking for. Same thing with, you might want to have a price criteria for,
Bless you. Yeah, I just worry, if we ask for like 50,000 square feet, I don't know how we would possibly consider paying for that. But
yeah.
So what was it before, 20? So
5 to 20,
5 to 20.
25, I don't know.
that sounds reasonable.
I don't know of some property, just,
Yeah.
Why?
5 to 25. And so we want to allow for kind of what we said, what we said, senior center, community center, municipal use, or is it just municipal use?
You could do any of that. I mean, if you say general municipal purposes, that's fine. But if you have a more specific use in mind, more information for them is more helpful, but it's also, it could potentially be limiting for the responses you get.
Yeah, and one of the things probably to think about is, so there's building, and there's also potentially what the building could be, or what lack of building could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could also want to know, just want a vacant site, or a site that's easily, demolished or something, so that you can build whatever you want there. That could be something you're interested in. The helpful thing about the RFP process for real property acquisition is that really you get to decide what your criteria are, but then you just stick to them.
And in the last one, we said 5 to 15,000, that was, space in a building, right? So is that what?
You could also say a site that could accommodate a 25,000 square foot building,
There you go.
you know?
How's that feel to everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
All right, so, is there anything else we would need to specify at this point, other to give Allison enough information to build this? Obviously a vote, but yeah.
A vote, I mean, just if there's any other limiting criteria that you want her to specify, price, location, availability, you know, anything like that. But if there are a few criteria that you want to put in there, that's okay too. Just whatever's most important to you.
I think we're looking
And
for.
your prior votes, Mark, have always authorized the town manager to issue the RFP, and so you've empowered him to work with Allison to set additional parameters, you know, to effectuate the desires of the board. So you can do that here as well.
Is there anything else we'd want Fidel to be aware of?
I would add parking, but I think if you put parking in there, you're gonna lose like everybody. So obviously parking for us is super important, but I think we just lose people if we put it in there. So, but other than that, no, fine.
The requirements don't have to be minimum requirements, they can just be, we call them comparative criteria, and you weigh them, you know, based on where they lie compared to other people, but also where they lie compared to, you know, what is most important to the town. So if somebody offers a perfect size site that maybe doesn't have quite enough parking, that could still be the most advantageous proposal, because the size of the site or the size of the building is more important than what you have for parking. So.
I think we're probably all right. Yeah.
I think the last RFP worked fine. I think this is a large pool of opportunities, so I don't think we need to overthink this.
Okay, so, we need to create a motion,
Correct.
unless you have one.
I do not,
There is no motion.
but I assume it's something like a move to to direct the town manager to work with Allison Jenkins, right?
Yep.
On an RFP for potential sites for a new senior community / municipal building?
Use.
Municipal use. Including any possible alternatives, we don't need that. So, and authorize the town manager to expend funds to explore any such sites.
Anything else, Avery?
I'm not sure, Chris, what did you mean by the last portion of that motion, authorize the town manager to expend funds?
Like
That's
if-
not necessary if
Okay,
the only action you're asking Fidel to do here is issue the RFP.
yeah. So,
And to clarify, the reason that was in this agenda item was in case we said, hey, maybe do some kind of hire somebody to do a drawing of something for us.
mhm. Yeah, so it would be something, or I can make the motion, we can change it. So move to authorize the town manager with Allison Jenkins to work on an RFP for senior community center / municipal use, to issue an RFP.
So friendly amendment, Chris, would be move to authorize the town manager to work with Allison Jenkins to issue an RFP seeking the acquisition of land or buildings within town for senior center and municipal uses on such terms and conditions discussed during this meeting.
So moved.
Sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Carla. Any discussion? Good. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? We are 5-0. Thank you, folks. Let's move on to the last item. All right. So I think we will take a motion to go into executive session.
Yeah. Yep, move to go into executive session, including staff members Fidel Maltez, Caitlin Nasella, Nabria Freed from the Town Council's office under executive session, purpose 6, to discuss the acquisition and value of 17 Hartnett Street. As the chair declares this is an open meeting, could have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the body, and the board will not reconvene in open session.
Friendly amendment, can we just add Jenny Merrill?
Jenny Merrill.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not appearing, we will take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kylo?
Yes.
Mark, yes. So we move to executive session.